Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts by taking us to a frozen wasteland, explaining how a white monster lives there. And it's a white serpent that devours glaciers. There's also a gray bear that causes earthquakes, and a vile rat that pollutes the seas. But an emperor who returned alive from the white wasteland once said the most dangerous thing there aren't the beasts at all. We're taken deeper into the white wasteland. We see a barbarian woman stomping on a bug, creating a giant explosion. A barbarian man grips onto another bug and rips it apart with his bare hands. As another man is slowly walking forward, the bugs are terrified of just his presence, and it's understandable why, as we see him effortlessly cut them into pieces. He looks at the other guy who ripped the bug apart and says only a barbarian would proudly wear their ignorance like that. And he asks how much longer he needs to hang around these ignorant brutes. The woman asks what he means by ignorant and if it's something they can eat. He sighs, saying never mind. As they start eating the bugs they just killed, the guy says he told them specifically not to eat that because it would kill them. They realize they made a mistake, and he starts glaring at them. He says it's been less than a week, and they already ate it all. The woman goes to explain it and says that it was the most noble challenge. The guy asks why she's so proud of it, before Baldy understands that what they ate was actually poisonous, and he begins foaming out of the mouth. We learn that Baldy's name is Greta. And the girl is surprised after seeing him fall over, and she tells him to get a hold of himself. The smart one watches, and as soon as she starts slapping the hell out of Greta to wake him up, he turns away and looks into the snow, saying this is not what he wants at all. In a world of fantasy and a world of wonder and magic, he quit his job and set off on a journey. He climbed the tallest mountain on Earth and reached the very center of the planet. He even made it to the southernmost point of the globe, but of course nothing happened. Reality was the furthest thing from fantasy. Every night he prayed that when he woke up he would be in the middle of a dream, and one day that prayer came true. It jumps to elsewhere, as we see a carriage being taken through the snow, and one of the dudes is complaining, and his boss tells him to wrap up tighter unless he wants to freeze to death. The mercenaries say that even if the rewards are great, this is plain foolish, since he says that crossing the white wasteland means that he has to be insane. His captain tells him to be quiet since they all agreed to this. They say they did, but they didn't think it would be like this. Inside of the wagon, we see a butler clicking his tongue. He then clears his throat, asking the lady inside the carriage if she's fine. She smiles, saying that she is. Her name is Mylena of the Akasha family. Outside, the mercenaries are complaining about how they're going to freeze to death, and the butler says this is rude of them. But Mylena says that he shouldn't be too harsh, since they're the ones who willingly escort them through this wasteland, and that they should bring them inside as they look like they're going to freeze to death. As the snow continues to pour, the butler says no, and that she already knows what dwells in these wastelands. She says that she knows of the monsters and explains that a long time ago an emperor who wanted to claim the entire world set his sights on conquering this white wasteland. He led countless warriors and soldiers, and even entered the wasteland himself, and years later, just as the empire had collapsed and faded from memory, the emperor had returned. He had lost all his men, returning alone and broken. He looked decades older and spoke like someone who had lost his mind. He said there were monsters in the wasteland, but the most dangerous thing wasn't the monsters, rather it was all of the barbarians, as this is where they live freely. The butler says that it's probably just a legend, and Mylena says the emperor's words held weight, and many of the monsters he described were later confirmed to exist. The butler laughs, saying there's never been a single sight of a barbarian. Mylena says that is true, as there are countless tales being told about the barbarians, but not a single sighting. The captain tells everybody to stop, as there's something out there. One of the other mercenaries asks what it is, and when he opens his eyes, all they see is a shadow because they can't see clearly. The captain then gets a better look at what it is, saying that he's got good news and bad news. His men tell him to spit it out, and he says the good news is that it's small. The bad news is that it's coming directly towards them. Everybody looks to be on edge, as the captain reaches for his sword in a panic. They realize that it's actually a human. As they get a better look at his white hair, and the fact that he's barely wearing clothing, they now understand what they're facing, and they all freeze up at the sight of a barbarian. The man glances toward them, and he says that he came out for a stroll because he was sick of looking at other barbarians, and yet he found outsiders in the snow, and that sure is lucky. The man smiles, saying that he did not expect to run into anyone out here. We finally learn that he is an ashen barbarian named Kettle. He says it's nice to meet them. He looks around and asks if they're merchants. They say they are, and he says that he takes them to their hired guards. The captain says that's right, and Kettle says that he suggests they turn back, though he doubts they will. The captain freezes up, and Kettle realizes that someone must be in the carriage. Mylena is nervously sitting inside the carriage. And the captain is still scared, and Kettle offers his services to them. They're all confused, and he asks if he was too unclear, and that he's offering to help them cross the wasteland. The captain says that a barbarian from the legends is asking to join them, and if this is really all he wants. Asking if he's really not hostile. Kettle says if he were, they'd already be dead. Realizing that he's right, the captain turns and knocks on the carriage, asking if she heard that. Mylena says that she did. And the butler asks what's going on. The captain says that the barbarian wants to be a mercenary, asking what she wants to do about it. Mylena thinks about it, asking if they fought him if they could win. The captain says he personally would not recommend it, as he can tell the dude is a beast. Mylena then hesitates, but says that they can do it, and that they will accept his offer. The captain says okay, and he turns back, telling Kettle that she has agreed. Kettle smiles, saying that is some great news. They're still scared of him, and he starts slowly approaching them. The captain asks what he wants, and Kettle tells him to relax, as they're just the hired help, and he needs to speak to the one in charge face to face. The captain says that if he tries anything, and Kettle says he already knows, that he'll regret it. And he starts walking past him. One of the mercenaries asks if it's really okay to let them meet. The captain says that the employer already gave her consent, but they're still very uneasy about it, saying that they should try stopping him. The captain asks how the hell they plan to do that, and they should not be ridiculous. Even though Butler is freaking out, asking what she has done, and Mylena tells him to calm down. Kettle then knocks on the carriage, asking if he can enter. Poor Butler is having a heart attack, and Mylena audibly gulps before saying come in. Kettle begins smiling. Now inside the carriage, the butler is cramped while Kettle looks comfortable. He says that he needs the butler to calm down because he has no intention of harming him. The butler is freaking out, saying that he shouldn't lie to him, and Mylena is just in awe that a barbarian from legend is standing before her. She says that it's a pleasure to meet him. Kettle says the pleasure is his, and that it's surprisingly warm here. Even for an indoor space, it must be difficult to maintain this level of warmth with all the snow outside. She says that it's taken care of with magic. Kettle says that he's really excited to see magic, especially when it comes to this world. She just wonders what that means, and he says as they may know, this place is dangerous. The chances of them passing through here safely with those mercenaries are slim to none, and that's why he will protect their lives. But he has one condition that they must follow. They look a bit worried, and Mylena asks what it is that he desires. He says that he wants knowledge of the world outside of these snow fields, and that the information they possess is all that he wants. She finds that a bit of a surprise, and Kettle says surely it's not a bad deal for her. She doesn't even know if she has a choice in the matter or not, and says that she understands. Kettle says that's good, asking for her name, and she introduces herself giving her full government ID. Kettle introduces himself, saying that he looks forward to working with her. He has always yearned for a fantasy world, and when he opened his eyes one day, he found himself as a barbarian in a snow field. There was no time to figure out why. All that existed here was terrible freezing cold, and endlessly strong monsters. To survive, he led the tribe in the snow field, hunting and desperately holding on. He doesn't even know how much time has passed. For countless years, he has strived relentlessly to escape this snow field. However, every single time he'd get to the border, he'd run into a magical barrier, and his quest is incomplete, and he cannot leave the snow field until it's completed. He was unable to leave due to this, and just when he was about to give up on everything, although he has no idea why they would willingly come to such a godforsaken place, people would occasionally visit from outside. That's when he realized that the world outside the snow field was the world of magic and fantasy he had so longed for. His own fantasy world. From that point on, he began to move beyond mere survival, and act in earnest. He followed his quest, and we see him on quest 295 to kill a giant lizard. He He trampled monsters and completed every quest given to him, in order to leave with a single-minded determination to get out. As long as he is stuck in this damn snow field, the information he can get from outsiders is incredibly precious. But most of the humans he's met so far have either panicked and drawn their blades, or have gone half mad, such as the Emperor. And this time, it seems like he can have a proper conversation, and he wonders how long has it been since he's had someone he can talk to like this, as he's been surrounded by nothing but ignorant barbarians. He listens to the rattling of the carriages, saying that it seems like she's transporting weapons. She's surprised, asking how he knew. He says he can hear the sharp clang of steel from the wagons, and there's no way he wouldn't be able to tell. He then asks if there's a war going on outside. She says there is. The Empire and the Kingdom are currently at war. Kettle says that the outside world isn't peaceful. She says it's not. The massive empire is pushing forward with overwhelming numbers and supplies, but the kingdom is not easily pushed back. That's because the swordsmaster and the hero are protecting the borders. Kettle's surprised there's both a hero and a swordsmaster, asking which powers they wield. She then asks if he's perhaps unfamiliar with mysteries. Kettle says he's never once left the snowfields. She says that she doesn't actually know the details herself, but there exists a power in the world known as mystery. Only a very small number of people can sense or use it, and they are granted one of the 5 ranks of strength. First, the third rate. This refers to those who can sense the power. The second rate is people who can use the power. First are individuals who can manifest the power. Mystery is mana or aura. Typically, knights, mages, and spirit summoners belong to this. Beyond that, the ranks become meaningless, as they are individuals who have surpassed common comprehension. The transcendent are beings who can dominate and freely wield mystery, capable of splitting heaven and earth. The swordsmaster belongs to this rank. The hero is in a league of his own. He is a monster who has gone beyond the domination of mystery to influence the world itself. The hero in and of itself is a legendary existence. In fact, the very act of having one's strength quantified and named is proof of that strength, and even a third rate is considered a powerful individual in a small domain. Kettle says he wants to meet them. She asks him to repeat. She just looks surprised by this. Kettle says he can't even remember how long he's been trapped here, and he was just desperate to survive. All he knows is that this is a snow field in the middle of a fantasy world, and he can't escape. And that he's always yearned to explore a fantasy world, and he really wants to get out of here. He smiles, saying that it's not a want, but a must. Mylena asks if he's a barbarian. He says it wouldn't be wrong to say that's the case, and judging by their reactions, they seem to be aware of the barbarian's existence. She says that's because of the legend. Kettle is surprised, asking about it, and she just finds it curious that he didn't know, even though he said that he's never gone out. She then tells him about the Emperor, and Kettle recalls it, saying that he thought he was just a madman. She asks what he means, and he says it was nothing, but her legends are probably correct, as he's met people like that before. He then comments on the number of wagons, saying that it seems she's transporting a rather large quantity of weapons, asking why they are passing through the snow field. She's surprised, and then tells him that they're in a bad spot, and that she needs a lot of money. He asks why, and she tells him that her family has been in commerce for generations. They accumulated a great deal of wealth, but due to the sabotage of those who were jealous, they had a crazy amount of debt. This journey is to prevent her family's downfall. Kettle says in that case, she must be planning to sell weapons to the kingdom that is the war of the empire. She asks how he picked that up so fast, and he says that she already said that the empire is pushing forward with overwhelming numbers. If that's the case, they wouldn't have any problem with weapons supply, and if not the empire, then it must be the kingdom in need of weapons. He doesn't know the values of the outside world, but an amount like this must be worth quite a bit, worth risking their lives to cross the snow field as well. And seeing as how she's trying to cross it, there must be no other way to get to the kingdom, asking if their territory's border happens to touch the empire's. She's just surprised that he picked all this up so fast, like he's a fantasy Sherlock Holmes. But tells him that's correct, and she heard that the barbarian of the legends was an ignorant savage, and she asks him who he is and if he is really a barbarian. The carriage then comes to a halt, which startles her, and even the butler asks what's going on. We hear a nasty screech outside. Kettle says it seems like they have some uninvited guests. Outside of the carriage, we see a giant monster that looks like it's melting. The captain is panicked, and so is Mylena, because it's called a black slime. Kettle asks if that's what it's called. She says yes, it's a monster documented in the records. He asks what records she's talking about, and she says that many powerful warriors have attempted to conquer the white snow field, and few of them returned alive. Those who did wrote down what they saw in books, and among those monsters, black slime is the most frequently recorded, asking Kettle if he also knows about them. He says of course, they're chewy and actually pretty good. So he eats them as snacks. She looks disgusted, asking if he really eats them. He asks if she wants to try one, saying that she should go catch it. She says hell no, and the entire carriage starts rattling, because outside the monster is screeching, going straight towards them. The captain is panicked, and Mylena asks Kettle to do something. He just sits there, and she asks him what he's doing. He says that he made a contract with her. He said he would protect their lives, so he has no intention of moving unless there's real danger. She asks what he means, and he says that they can handle that themselves. The black slime starts going towards them, and the captain tells his men to put up a shield. They do so, as we see him getting pushed back into the snow. He then gets yeeted. The other mercenary goes in screaming with his axe ready for an attack, but he as well gets sent flying backwards into one of the carriages. He drops his axe, asking what the hell is going on. Then it goes for the captain, and he warns them all that it only moves in straight lines, so they should scatter and coordinate. The other mercenaries say yes, as they ready themselves, and one of them starts going for an attack on its side. He swings, and the black slime turns towards him. As he cuts through its face, it begins to scream, shooting out purple goo. He then raises his spear and throws it forward, and it pierces straight through the head of the black slime. Now that they see their attacks are working, the captain gains confidence, telling them all to keep attacking, and he runs through with his sword imbued with a green aura and slices through it. He says simple attacks won't work, and they need to aim for the core hidden inside. As they all work together to deal with it, the captain raises his sword and pierces down with a final blow, shattering the core. The black slime is now defeated. The mercenaries, surprised they have won, start chanting, saying they finally did it. Mylena as well is just excited, saying that they actually did it. Kettle just looks disappointed. They continue their trek, and they had to stop because of a giant wolf. The mercenaries start attacking, aiming for its throat in unison. They're actually managing to hold their own as we see them cut through its neck, causing it to bleed out. The mercenaries then say that the snow field is not as rumored after all, and that the rumors are just exaggerated. The captain warns them not to let their guards down, as they are not even halfway through yet. One of the mercenaries then wonders if that barbarian is even strong after all, as it's just a legend of the emperor, just like this wasteland. He might just be the bottom of the food chain in this snow field, and he's starting to think he's just leeching off of them. At the very least, they should test his skills. There's then a knock on the carriage, and Mylena wonders what it is. Kettle stares out, and one of the mercenaries speaks up, saying that he needs to tell Mylena something. It turns out that they just want her permission. As mercenaries, they have a contract with her, so it's only natural they need to guarantee her safety. She says that she's grateful that they accepted the job, as everybody else ran away after hearing. The mercenaries say that there is one thing they can't accept. The barbarian hasn't fought even once. She tries to explain, and he asks if he's allowed to test whether Kettle truly deserves special treatment. She wonders what kind of test he's talking about and looks towards the captain anxiously. He says that he tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. Kettle smiles, asking if they really want to test his skills, saying he doesn't mind, but it's not possible right now. They ask what he means, and he tells them that they have guests ahead of them. They ask what nonsense he's talking about. And we hear a monster saying that the frail mortals outside have arrived, and that he's going to enjoy this rare delicacy today. The mercenaries all look scared and turn up, seeing a giant serpent, asking the humans to bark for him and struggle all day like that will be seasoning for it. Freaky snake, average Valorant player. Mylena starts screaming as she covers her ears. The mercenaries as well brace themselves, because the winds are harsh and cold. Kettle says this is enough, these people are his guest, and he tells the snake to go back. The snake asks why he's here and if he's forgotten the laws of the snowfields, if he strays far from his tribe's territory. Kettle cuts it off, saying that's none of his concern. The snake tells him not to be ridiculous, as it starts to form a giant blizzard tornado, warning him that he is the snake. Kettle says he needs to be taught a lesson, and then he rears back his fist and punches the snake straight in its gut. The shockwave it produces is hella powerful, as it starts sending snow flying. Even the snake looks extremely pained. There's a giant blue explosion that ensues, and the mercenaries are doing their best not to fall over due to the pressure. A follow-up explosion, and now Mylena and the butler are at risk of being swept up into it. The snake is slumped on the ground, and Kettle says that it's the type that only listens after a beating. Mylena calls out to him, and Kettle says that he's going to finish cleaning up here, and it won't take too long. Kettle then stomps the floor and starts running forward full speed. I guess the snake isn't dead, as he rears back his fist, and we see another giant explosion. Mylena looks absolutely impressed, and some time later, the mercenaries are saying that they have committed a sin worthy of death, begging for their lives to be spared. Kettle says it's only natural not to trust a stranger so easily, and he understands. They continue their trek, and outside the butler is low-key freezing to death. Kettle looks at him and tells Mylena there is something he is curious about. She asks what it is, and he says judging by her attire and her speech, she doesn't belong to a mere agent for her family. So why is she personally embarking on such a life-threatening journey? She says that he is very sharp, and that she is the first daughter of Lady Belyaka, the concubine of Lord Kasakakasha. Kettle asks if that means her mother is the second wife. She says yes, she came through a political marriage only to be used and abandoned. She is a pitiful mother, unable to secure any real power. That she and her mother are family in name only. In reality, they are nothing to the Akashas and are treated like servants. She realizes that she has been oversharing due to Kettle's silence, and tells him that she volunteered for this trade mission. She is surprised and says that even though it is a life-threatening journey, because someone has to set an example, she decided to do it. Kettle says she is very intelligent, she has great ambition, but that greed is good. She is just surprised and goes to say something, and we hear people outside screaming out of excitement. They both turn, and we see her eyes light up. The captain says they have arrived, as they see grass, meaning they have made it through the snowfields. They thank Kettle, and he asks how they will manage the return trip. She says that by then she could simply pass through the empire. He says that makes sense, as she will have sold the weapons, and she will be empty-handed, so crossing the borders won't be difficult. She then calls out to him, saying that before he said that she was intelligent and ambitious, asking what exactly he meant. He says exactly what it sounds like. While she is intelligent, at the same time, she is very ambitious. Her family was once highly renowned, but it is now teetering on the brink due to a lack of funds. So even though she is the daughter of a concubine, if she personally makes a move to carve out a path for survival while her family faces ruin, it is very obvious who her subjects will trust and follow. Her goal is to seize control of her family, asking if he is wrong with his assumption. Kettle says that was definitely a perfect answer, and she says that he's not wrong at all. Kettle says that he was right, and that the child of a concubine taking on a dangerous challenge to inherit the family name is a tale as old as time. But she thinks of him as super smart, and not like those fools who think they're clever, and the power he used to defeat the white snake without a scratch. If she were to become his, it would be different, and she asks if he's ever considered leaving the fields, and if he would like to join her. He says he'll decline for now, as he still has something to take care of. She looks defeated, but realizes that it might not be over, and grabs onto something, handing him a pendant, asking if he'll accept it. And if by some chance he comes to the outside world and looks for her family, to show them this. He says that if it's a gift, he will gladly accept it. She then thanks him and hopes they will meet again one day. He says same, and they drive off into the forest. We then get a time skip of 5 years. And finally, all conditions have been met. He has completed 784 quests, and he may now leave the snowfields. So it's finally time for him to explore the fantasy world he's been longing for, and he looks really excited. He starts smelling his surroundings, saying it's everything he's missed, the smell of grass, flowing water, everything he couldn't smell in the frozen wasteland is so nice. He turns back and yells at the wasteland, saying that he hopes he never has to go back. Kettle says that this is a place he dreamed of even in his sleep. A world of illusions and the unknown he thought he could never reach. Though his starting point went horribly wrong, he somehow survived, so he can enjoy the world full of magic, swords, dragons, and elves, and really embrace the fantasy itself. Without that desire, he would have died a long time ago. The snowy plains was a hell he couldn't survive with a mere will to live. He spots some glowing lights off in the distance, saying that must be a village, and finally he'll meet some civilized people. He tried to talk to his fellow barbarians, who sleep in snow holes, about the need for shelter. But they'd blankly stare at him, not understanding a thing he said, and he really misses human villages. He wonders what to say for the first greeting, and if he'll go with hello or ask about the world. Whatever it is, he has decided to be gentlemanly. As he gets closer and closer, we see the trees look really unique. A man stretches out his hand, telling all the fellow elves that this will now be their home, and they look super excited about it. He tells everybody to unpack their things, but one of the other elves asks him a question. The elder asks what's wrong with him, and he asks if the place is really safe. Gandalf says that it is, and that this is an extremely remote area, and humans can't come here. He says that he knows that part as well, however the snowy plains are right nearby. Gandalf asks if he's really worried about the monsters from the plains, and the dude says that they are very close by. Gandalf tells him it's not a problem. For thousands of years, nothing has ever come out of the snowy plains. Besides, they've even placed a barrier just in case. It's a barrier that obscures presence and makes this place look like an ordinary forest. They barely managed to implement it after designing it for months using ancient elven magic. As long as this barrier exists, outsiders can never approach them, and even if the monsters of the snowy plains did, it wouldn't have mattered. As Kettle puts his hand through the barrier, we see it rip, and he says that he feels like he just tore something, wondering what that was, and also how far he has to go to see the village. He then looks over, surprised, as he spots a little elf girl lost in the forest it seems. He says he can't believe it's an elf, and a real one at that. It's one of the most iconic races of any fantasy world. He didn't expect to meet one so soon, and this sure is lucky, and he's glad to be alive. The little girl though is scared, as she doesn't know where she is, and she might have wandered too far. She then notices a shadow looming over her, and her face is filled with horror as Kettle greets her with a very scary hello. She freezes up instantly, and then starts to faint. But before she falls to the ground, Kettle catches her and wonders what's wrong. He says that he hasn't even had a proper conversation, and she's suddenly fainted, and since it's come to this, he wonders if he should take the child to the village. Depending on the mythology, elves are generally a gentle race aligned with order and good. If he returns the child, maybe he'll be welcomed as a kind person. He wonders what it would feel like to be welcomed by elves, and he smiles, saying that he's looking forward to it, as he picks her up and looks off towards where he needs to go. As he is, they're freaking out about how there's a human here, and one of the women is screaming about her child. They ask how the hell he got through the barrier, and Kettle says this is not going as planned. The kid's mother is just bawling, screaming, and Gandalf says there's no way, asking how a human can be here, and says that there should have been a barrier. They then warn him that there's been a crack in the barrier, and Gandalf freaks out, asking where the queen is. They say that she is currently away on a brief patrol of the area. Kettle tries to say that he's not their enemy, and they warn him that if he does not return the child, they'll chase him to death. Gandalf says that his location has been exposed. The barrier was made with ancient elven magic, and no mere trick could even let someone approach it. The fact it's broken must mean that humans came fully prepared, and he wonders for how long they have been tracking him. Kettle just wonders if he's registered, and says that he needs to clear the misunderstanding. He looks down, seeing the little girl shaking as tears fill up her eyes. She then opens them, surprised, as he puts her on the ground, telling her to return to her people. She looks back up towards him and sees the fact that bro looks like a straight villain, and she gets scared before screaming and crying, running back to her mother. Kettle just wonders if his face is that scary. He says that he thought his face was pretty decent, but since he's returned the child, he tells them all that he's not their enemy. Gandalf says that the hostage has been relieved, and that everyone get ready to attack. As they draw back their bows, they shoot out magical arrows towards Kettle, and he wonders if they just can't hear him. Kettle says that elves are more savage than he imagined, and that elves are supposed to be a gentle people who love nature and seek peace, but these elves are violent and savage. Then he says that it makes sense, as they live in the wild, and nature is a world where only the strong survive, which is far from peaceful. It's only natural that they'd be ferocious, and that this is what it must really be like. As the arrows are bouncing off of him, they shoot out another barrage. They wonder what kind of artifact he's wrapped in, as it has to have a limit, saying that they need to keep attacking. Kettle raises both hands and says they need to be calm, as he claps, sending out a giant shockwave, shattering what I assume is the sound barrier, as it shoots out a massive explosion. The elves are almost sent flying backwards, and they say they need to deploy their barrier. It turns out they are actually sent flying backwards, as they are flung straight into the air, and that this shockwave isn't just seen within their barrier, it actually shatters it and spreads out throughout the entire forest. Gandalf begins shaking, asking what the hell this is, and Kettle warns him that he is not their enemy. He then realizes he forgot to control his strength. He calls out to the elves, as a fire arrow in the shape of a bird flies in. He looks up towards it, and there's a giant explosion. Gandalf and the other villager are surprised when we see a woman appear, standing on some rocks nearby, and that this is their queen. While she's looking down at Kettle, we learn that she is the hero of Epi and the queen of the Leaf clan named Marsilia Hussein Karuja. She asks what's going on here. Gandalf says that a human attacked them. Marsilia says that she sees, and that this means this place isn't safe either. Kettle starts brushing away the smoke from the attack, telling her to wait, and that he'd appreciate it if she just listened to what he has to say. Marsilia is just surprised that he's unscathed, and even Gandalf is asking how he's okay after taking a direct hit from her. She says that she can't believe a powerhouse like him is targeting them, and then she starts to look at him with eyes full of disgust, saying that she hates humans. She draws her bow back, telling him that she is the queen of the Leaf clan, and she draws it back fully now, saying that she will make him pay the price for his greed of seeking them out. Kettle wonders if they can't understand him, saying that they're obviously communicating in the same language, and wonders if he's just being ignored, or perhaps the relationship between humans and elves is just that bad. He says there's nothing to be done about it. The only thing he learned back in the snow plains was that people only listen once you land a hit. She starts combining the elements on this attack, and once it's fully prepared, she releases it, and it starts flying through the air hella quick, and forms a giant water dragon as it flies towards Kettle. He rears back his fist, and swings forward, coming straight into contact with it, but it's not just that, as he starts to destroy it, and his own attack shoots up all the way through, directly back towards Marsilia. Kettle realizes he once more forgot to control his strength, as all we do is hear her screaming after the attack lands. She's now laying on the ground, and speechless. Kettle wonders if he just made things worse, and she just looks terrified. She says that she understood from that one clash that he's powerful, at least above the level of a transcendent, and wonders why someone that strong would be here. She tells everybody to run away immediately. They start calling out for her, and she yells, saying that everybody needs to flee now. They listen to their queen and run. She then tells Kettle that she acknowledges his strength, but he will never accomplish his goal here. He says that he was just trying to talk, and he can't believe things have gone this sideways. She then closes her eyes, and starts to speak her mantra, as we see a red aura swirling in her hands. She then opens her eyes, and we see a giant fireball floating above her. As something is starting to form within it, we see a bull named Piego. Kettle is just super excited, saying that he can't believe he's witnessed a summon already, and that the creatures in the snow plains were grotesque and bizarre. There were a few that looked like something out of a fantasy, but most were just hideous, but this creature before him is a bull with horns of blazing fire, and since this is a spirit, it really is letting him feel the fantasy world of life. Marsilia tells Piego to annihilate the enemy before him. Piego says that it's just as he thought, contracts aren't worth the trouble, and this is nothing but a hassle. He is the highest grade fire spirit. She tells him to be quiet. We learn that Piego is a being that embodies the pure flame. The stronger a spirit, the more ancient it is, and thus the greater its pride. With her power, she can barely summon it, but she just managed to secure a contract with the help of another tribe. She never thought she'd have to use it in this circumstance, and tells Piego to fulfill his contract. Piego asks if he just needs to kill the human before him, and then looks over and begins sweating nervously, and asks if that's even a human, as Kettle is staring at him evilly. Kettle still just pogging out of his gourd, asking if this is real. They continue as Marsilia says that the human has intruded upon their lands. Piego says that he's decided, and he'll reduce him to ash and leave nothing behind. Kettle just wonders what he did wrong. As Piego's flames start to roar, he swipes his hooves, readying a charge, as he's full force charging at Kettle. Kettle stares at him, and all we see is the explosion from the charge. Marsilia has to brace herself from the shockwave, and when she looks over she's surprised, as Kettle's hands are on Piego's horns. He has stopped him with a single hand. Even Piego is confused. Then Kettle smiles, saying that this puts him at ease since it's a beastly form. He rears back his fist, saying that it's going to make it easier to beat him to death. Marsilia realizes she's made a grave mistake, as Kettle hits Piego straight in the forehead, shattering the ground beneath the two of them. The attack passes all the way through Piego and shatters the entire landscape behind them. It's the equivalent of a damn atom bomb being released in a fantasy world. Holy shit, he's so strong. It starts sending debris through the forest, and Marsilia braces herself while screaming. As Kettle's fist continues forward, Marsilia drops to her knees, asking what the hell this is. With Piego no longer being there, she says this can't be real. Kettle slowly walks over towards her, and she begs for his mercy, if not for her, then at least for her kin. Kettle says that he is not her enemy. She finally understands him, and she's surprised, asking what he means. After a long conversation, they finally came to an understanding that he was truly not their enemy. Marsilia apologizes, saying that she judged too hastily. They mistook him as an enemy who took their child hostage, and they committed a grave insult. Her conscience is now feeling heavy. Kettle says it's fine, as they said they were driven here by humans, so he understands. It's a little sad that they never gave him a chance to explain. She asks if he's really not one of the humans chasing them, and he says this is his first time even seeing an elf, and there aren't any in the White Wasteland to begin with. She then realizes where he's from, and asks if he's an Ashen barbarian. He says that's what the outsiders call him, and she says that's impossible, as humans aren't meant to survive there, and if he comes from the wasteland then maybe that means others could come out of it too. He says he's not too sure, but he doubts anyone else would. There are strict rules in the wasteland, even powerful beings like serpents cannot defy them. For some reason he was able to bypass them in the form of a quest, but that's probably a very rare exception. She says it's a relief, and he asks if her summon's okay, as he did split that bull in half after all. She says that he shouldn't worry, as spirits are beings of nature, who, when forcibly unsummoned, return to the spirit realm. She then stands up, saying that she's been rather rude, and asks if there's anything he'd like, and if he wishes it, she'll do whatever she can. He says he's curious about her spirit, and asks if beings other than elves can make contracts with them. She says that's probably not going to be possible. Of course, among humans, those with a deep affinity to nature can sometimes form contracts. Kettle asks if it's impossible, and she thinks about it, saying that if he truly wants one, to go to Elfo Sagrado. He asks what that is, and she says that it's where the god of the elves resides, the holy land of all elves, and there it might be possible. Kettle gets excited, asking if a human like him would even be allowed in, and she says normally no, but with her introduction it should be possible, and she'll tell him where, but he must keep it to himself. She says that Elfo Sagrado is the dream destination of every elf researcher, but for elves, letting a human near that place is incredibly dangerous. To protect a place more precious than life itself, no elf would ever reveal its location, but she truly wants to believe in Kettle, and as a token of her apology she hands him this thing, and he takes it, thanking her. She says that if he gets close, their god may test him, but she thinks he'll pass and wishes him luck. She then introduces herself once more as the queen of the Leaf tribe, asking what his name is. Kettle tells her he doesn't have a fancy title like her, as he's just a barbarian. Sometime later, we see him stomping the floor as he's running forward at full speed directly towards where she had guided him to. As he's going through the forest incredibly fast, he's producing loud-ass shockwave after loud-ass shockwave. We see a guard in a nearby city wondering what's going on, and they don't know exactly what it is, but there's something approaching. This is on the border of the Varkan territory, the kingdom of Chent. The head guard tells everybody to get ready for a fight. As they see, as the sound starts getting closer and closer from the forest, Kettle then starts walking very slowly forward, and the head guard is surprised and looks horrified. Kettle asks if they are guards, saying it's nice to meet them. They just stare at him awkwardly and wonder if the loud sound or smell was him. They say based on his ash-gray hair and the scar on his chest, he might be the Ashen Barbarian. Turns out the rumors about barbarians are all about him, and the translation earlier made it hard to understand. He walks forward, and they tell him to stop. As if he comes any closer, they will attack. Kettle says he would prefer if they were calm, as he is not their enemy. The guards ask what he seeks from them. Kettle raises his hand and points forward. They turn to see what he is pointing at, asking if he means the wall. He says he would just like to visit their territory. They stare at him blankly, and it jumps to Kettle being asked by the captain if he just wants to visit the territory and pass through it. Kettle says if possible he would like to stay for a while, but he's not sure how long. The captain asks what his name is, and Kettle tells him. He asks if he is someone who can verify his identity, or any form of ID. Kettle says he doesn't, and then he thinks about it, recalling what Mylena said. He grabs the emulant and pulls it out, asking if this is enough to verify. He asks what that is, and Kettle tells him that it's the crest of House Akasha, and he received it from someone of the bloodline. The guard captain says that if it's the Akasha family, then they must be the merchant family from the Danian kingdom. Kettle asks if he knows them, and the guy says it's a house that has been gaining prominence lately. Their powers have grown rapidly since a new head took over a few years ago. Kettle asks if it can be used to verify his identity. He says yes. The guard captain says that it doesn't look fake, but it's hard to confirm. Kettle asks if it's not from this kingdom, and the guard captain says no, this is from the kingdom of Gehenna, and it can't be confirmed, but it is helpful, and he may enter, but there's a condition. Kettle asks what it is. The guard captain says they need confirmation that he's not a threat. Turns out they're just asking him to form a party, as there are 3 others trying to enter the territory. The condition is to clear a dungeon near the domain with those whose identities are unclear. Kettle says the conditions are easier than he expected, and that he accepts it. The guard captain tells him there's one more condition. After clearing the dungeon, he must report everything that happened inside. Kettle now understands that those with unclear statuses are meant to observe one another, and in the process they identify any suspicious ones. He thinks it's pretty clever. The guard captain says that it's not exactly like that, asking if he's really a barbarian. Kettle says he is, and he as well is one of those people who has the misconception that all barbarians are just brain damaged. The guard captain tells him that he's the first barbarian to enter the domain, and that they can end the talk here and get going. We see an old guy sighing, saying that even if it's the law, going into a dungeon with rats that go after people's pouches sure is tragic. He's a self-proclaimed paladin named Alessandro Tyrinus. The other guy he's going with is a rogue named Kasen Hark, asking why he's picking a fight, and if he's mad because a thief scammed him and stole his fortune. Alessandro asks how dare a petty thief insult a paladin, and Kasen laughs at the fact he called himself a paladin, saying there's no way they dress this poorly, and they wouldn't be here in the first place. He's just a wandering warrior who calls himself such, and he's a bottom feeder just like him. Kasen says that his surname of Tyrinus sure is dumb as hell. Alessandro draws his blade, yelling at him, and Kasen says that he's ready to scrap, and there's no way that ragged armor will protect him, as we see poison at the tip of his blade. Alessandro tightens the grip on his, and as their swords start scraping with one another, we hear a woman asking if they could stop. They both do, looking over at her as she sighs. She says that she can't believe that she has to raid a dungeon with them, wondering if this will be okay. She is a cleric of Calicia, named Hayes. She says that the minimum number for a dungeon is 4, and that one more should be coming, as we see them all waiting. She just can't help but feel anxious about it. The door then opens, as the guard captain says the last person has arrived. Kasen says that he hopes this one is sane, and the guard captain says he can see for himself. Kettle slowly walks forward and has to lower his head even into the room. When he does, they all look surprised, and Kettle smiles asking if there is new party members. They are all scared and say that he's huge, and they start wondering if he's really a human. Kasen's just freaking out because of the pressure he's releasing, and Kettle says it's nice to meet them. The guard captain tells them to talk among themselves, as he will return shortly. Kettle says they can start with introductions. He tells them he's a barbarian and asks about Kasen, who tells him that he's a thief. Alessandro introduces himself, and Kettle asks if paladins use holy power. He says normally yes, but he's a rather special paladin, so he can't. Kettle says he sees, and Hayes says that she serves the god of lies and deceit, and that she's a cleric of Cilicia. Kettle says it's nice to meet her, and asks if her identity is really that uncertain even as a cleric. She says that the god she serves is the god of lies and deceit after all, and he's not well regarded. Kettle says he sees. Sometime later, the guard captain enters the room again, saying that if they're all ready, they can head out. Kettle looks ready to go, but everybody else seems a little bit anxious about this. Sometime later, the guard captain tells them they've arrived, and Kettle's surprised, as he's about to do his first ever dungeon in a fantasy world. The guard captain tells them that it's a 3-floor dungeon, and the monsters are undead, and that all they have to do is clear the dungeon and return with proof. Kettle says they can start the raid, asking Kosen for the plan. Kosen calls him sir, and he says he can just drop the sir since they're a team, and he laughs awkwardly. He then clears his throat, saying that Kettle and Alessandro will take the front lines, and he'll check for traps, and that Hayes will support the fight from the rear with her various abilities. Kettle says he understands, and it's pretty simple. Kosen once more laughs awkwardly, and Kettle says they should head out then. As they start walking into the dungeon, we see them a little on edge, looking around. Hayes says that it's so dark she can't see anything. Kosen has the same feeling, as there are no traps or tricks so far, and it looks suspiciously normal. He then notices something, telling them to hold on, since there are monsters. Kettle says he doesn't see anything. Kosen asks if he sees the scattered bone fragments on the floor, as they are skeletons. If they get any closer, they'll rise and attack them. Kosen says that he thought the guard captain knew from the start, and this dungeon is not just for verifying their identities. From the beginning, it was just a tool to easily get rid of troublesome outsiders. Kettle says he's never fought a skeleton before, and Kosen says they're pretty strong, and they'll keep moving even if they're wounded, and since they're made of bone, their defense is a little sturdy, and the dungeon's difficulty is going to be higher than he thought. He tells Hayes to get her powers ready, and Alessandro to get his shield up, and Kettle to get ready too, as he's going to aim for an opening during the fight. A skeleton's body moves even when damaged, so he needs to aim for the neck, which is its weak spot. They're pretty tough, so he'll have to hit them multiple times. Kettle says he's a great leader, and he understands. Kosen says they can start, and Kettle slowly walks forward as the skeleton starts to get imbued with magic. Kettle is surprised, and it slowly starts to stand up, glaring at them. Alessandro looks on edge, while Hayes starts speaking enchantment table. Kosen starts to slip into the shadows, and Kettle rears his hand back, open-palmed, and when the skeleton charges in with an attack, Kettle swings forward, slapping the piss out of it, and wonders if it's really just this weak, as he's pulverized it into straight dust. Alessandro, Hayes, and Kosen are all just absolutely speechless, and Kettle laughs, saying that it's just as Kosen said, and that it stops moving once you take its head off. Kosen laughs awkwardly once more, saying that's not what he meant. Skeletons are creatures made of bone, and a skeleton's bones are extremely hard in comparison, as they're not like normal bones. Even for a skilled swordsman, it's pretty difficult for them to cut through it in a single strike, and it's nearly impossible without aura. Furthermore, this skeleton was strengthened by the dungeon's mana. The only way to defeat a skeleton is by repeatedly attacking its neck to sever the vertebrae. To go beyond simply severing the neck bones, and instead pulverize it, by all accounts would be impossible. He knew that Kettle was strong, but he never thought he'd be this strong, wondering if he's really a human. The entire thing is just a pile of dust now, and they're all still staring at him in disbelief. Kettle then turns, saying that they should keep going. They all say right away, and start running towards him, and he says there's no need to rush. Kosen says yes, and gives him a salute, and both Hayes and Alessandro just don't want to die. As they keep walking forward, Kettle notices something, as he sees a skeleton's head on the floor. Kosen asks why he's stopping, and we see tons of skeletons starting to form up from the ground. Hayes yells, and Kosen and Alessandro ready themselves for a brawl, but Kettle says he has a favor to ask. They all wonder what it is, and he says he wants to handle the skeletons by himself, as there's something he wants to test out. They tell him to do as he pleases, and Hayes agrees. Kettle thanks them, as he slowly walks forward towards one of the skeletons, picking up a sword. They wonder what he's planning to do, and Kettle says this is fascinating, wondering how the skeleton put itself together. It leaps towards him with its sword reared back, and swings, and Kettle catches it in between his fingers, and snaps the blade, asking what it's going to do about this. The skeleton then pulls its half-sword back, readying another attack, and leaps off the wall, going straight towards Kettle. As it swings down towards him, Kettle steps just enough where it cuts some of his hair, and looks super excited, asking what it'll do now, as he grabs onto its wrist, pulverizing it into dust, and we see its hand drop to the floor. The skeleton looks down at it, confused, and then glares back up at him, before it kicks the sword up and starts twirling it in the air, before it catches it with its left hand. Kettle is just so amused, saying that it knows how to switch to its offhand. The skeleton charges in, this time with a reverse grip, and Kettle grabs onto its wrist once more, and pulls its arm off. The skeleton starts to fall backwards and stumbles, but catches its balance as it comes in for a follow-up attack, using its broken wrist straight for Kettle. Kettle catches it, and breaks it once more, saying that this thing is actually pretty smart, and Hayes just looks horrified that he's toying with it. Even Alessandro and Kassen do. As to their eyes, Kettle is playing with it, and in reality, he's just fascinated. Kettle starts whacking at it, and Kassen looks terrified. The skeleton skull falls to the ground, and Kettle glares at it, saying that it can't move with only its head. As he raises his foot, he stomps it, saying this sure is amusing. He then asks if he's kept them waiting long, apologizing for the delay. Kassen says not at all, telling him to take his time, and Kettle thanks him. We then see him over another pile of dust, and he tells them that he's ready to head out once more. They all say yes sir, and follow him closely behind. He then comes to a stop, and Kassen says that this is where they need to go, as it leads to the second floor. They start heading down the stairs, and Kassen lets out a sigh, saying that it would be best if they took a brief rest. Kettle looks up at them, and thinks about it, saying that would indeed be for the best, and Kassen thanks him before bowing. We see Kettle sitting there, and they rest but they all just look super awkward. He says that he has something to ask in regards to this dungeon. Hayes asks what it is. Kettle says it's embarrassing, but his knowledge on dungeons is very insufficient. Hayes tells him that it's a virtue to have a desire to learn, and she's not terribly knowledgeable herself, but she can help. Kettle says he's grateful, and she wonders what it is that he's curious about. Kettle says that this dungeon is located rather close to the territory, and wonders if there are no issues with the dungeon and the monsters within. Hayes says generally, monsters don't venture outside the dungeon, although there are exceptions. Cases like that are identified and dealt with beforehand. Kassen clears his throat, saying that dungeons are a natural phenomenon. Sometimes they appear as caves, and other times as towers. The majority of dungeons manifest near densely populated areas. Kettle says that it makes sense now why it's here. Hayes tells him when a dungeon manifests, the local lord assesses the danger level, and then outsiders like themselves, mercenaries, or guards are dispatched to clear it. Kettle says that's interesting, asking if they do not manifest inside the territory. Hayes says that's correct, and they always appear at a distance. Kettle says he sees, and asks if there is a reward for successful conquest of the dungeons. Hayes says that's correct, and there's usually a boss on the final floor, and they will receive various rewards for defeating it. For a dungeon this size, the reward should be quite substantial. Kettle laughs, saying it's just like a game. She asks what he means, and he says that he was talking to himself. He has one more thing that he is curious about, and they tell him to ask. Kettle asks who it is that makes the dungeons. Hayes is confused, asking what he means. As dungeons occur naturally, no one creates them. Kettle says there are too many oddities for that to be the case. First, they manifest near populated areas, as if demanding to be explored. They appear near settlements, tempting people with treasure. For a natural phenomenon, it feels far too deliberate. Hayes says that, now that he mentions it, it does make a lot of sense. That was such a given, she never even thought to question it. Even Kassen says he never considered it, or even doubted it. It was simply the natural order. They wonder how a barbarian is questioning the very truth of their world, as barbarians by all accounts are ignorant and savage people. All beings devoid of blood and tears. That much is known by everyone in the world, but if they go based off everything they know, then they can't say that this man is a typical barbarian. Kettle says it sure is interesting, and Kassen snaps out of his thoughts. Kettle asks everyone if they have rested enough. They all sit up, saying yes. Kettle says that if they are ready, then they can depart once more. Hayes says yes, and they start heading out. As they get deeper into the second floor, Kettle notices something, as there's a chest on the ground, asking what it is. Kasen says that it's a treasure chest, one of the rewards of the maze, and he may have it, provided he can unlock it. But while that's easy for him to say, a chest of this quality, they would need a master rogue with proven lockpicking skills. A better rogue of that caliber wouldn't be in this dungeon. So they'll have to abandon the chest. Kettle asks Kasen to unlock it, and Kasen wonders why the hell he's asking him to do it. Kettle says that it's a treasure chest, and he is a rogue. Kasen says that is true, and before he can finish a sentence, Kettle says that it is the role of the rogue to handle treasure chests, therefore he is asking him to do it. Kasen says that he's not wrong, but there is a problem. If he could actually do that, he wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. A bottom feeder like him, who isn't even acknowledged by the guild, has no business knowing how to pick locks, but he can't just tell him the truth, because Kettle's face looks so excited, and if he's honest, it will instantly turn into disappointment. He starts having a bad mental image of Kettle, calling him pathetic, and he recalls how he turned those skeletons into dust, and doesn't want to end up like them. He's crying internally, but outside, he says that he'll give it a shot, and laughs awkwardly. We then see him trying, and he says that if he fails this, he's not going to get out of here alive, and Kettle says he finds this very curious. Kasen tells himself to remember the skills he saw while working as a porter for the others. It's not coming to his head, but he lights the fire, saying that he's going to have to risk his life and remember this. Bro's bloodline depends on this. Kasen then notices something, and Kettle sees him shaking, wondering what's up. Kasen cries tears of joy, saying that it's opened. I actually like this guy. Hayes as well is excited, saying that she heard that only skilled thieves can unlock treasure chests. But to see it, he's truly amazing. Kettle says that's very impressive, and Kasen says that it definitely seemed impossible, wondering how it happened. He says that he's always prided himself on doing his best to live, but at this moment, for the first time in his life, he began to question his best, wondering if he was really living his best life in the past. Kettle asks how much value the stuff inside has. Hayes says that with this much, a regular family could live comfortably for about a month, and they could live quite luxuriously. Kettle laughs, asking if that's really the case, telling Kasen to take care of the rewards. Kasen says yes sir. He grabs a chalice out of the chest and looks down at it, completely enamored. Kettle calls out to him, causing him to freak out and scream. Kettle asks if he needs help, and Kasen doesn't say anything, so it makes Kettle wonder if he's hurt, but Kasen says that he didn't do anything, leaving the three of them confused. Sometime later, as they're walking through the dungeon, we see Kasen carrying a sack full of goodies. Kettle tells everybody to stop, as there are skeletons, and they're looking at them up ahead. From the bones, there are 4. Kettle says he'll handle 3 of them. They all realize what this means, and he says that he'll leave the last one to them. Kasen says this is going to be a real battle, and Alessandro and Hayes are ready as well. Kettle walks forward, and as the skeletons start to wake up, Kasen says that whenever he sees it, the sight of bones being assembled gives him chills. As they're now starting to stand up, we see all 4 of them, and Kettle tells everybody to get ready. We see a golden aura enveloping all 3 of them from Hayes' buff. Kettle tells them to start the fight, and Kasen charges in. He swings at one of them, cutting its neck, but it wasn't enough, and then when the other skeletons go to surround him, Kettle grabs onto them, pulling 3 of them away like he said he would, saying that this is a rare spectacle, and they shouldn't interrupt, and he'll let them all handle it. The skeleton raises its sword, swaying down, at which Alessandro blocks. As it's busy grinding against his shield, Kasen leaps off the wall, coming in for an attack from behind and swings towards its back. Hayes takes this chance while it's distracted and uses a spell called the Shadow of Confusion, giving Alessandro a big buff as he's glowing very golden. He dashes forward, slicing through the skeleton's neck with his attack. The skeleton drops to its knees, but we see that its neck was only fractured. It then starts laughing, realizing it lived, and Kettle as well begins laughing, as we see he's already dealt with the other 3 skeletons, saying that it's really impressive to see a party's core skills in action firsthand, and that it's quite rare. He then crushes one of the skulls in his hand, saying that with the obstacles cleared, he wants to enjoy the show. Kasen goes in for a follow-up, and they all realize now that Kettle is doing this as a test for the three of them. The poor skeleton looks scared and a little confused as to why they're all looming over him, because the three of them realize if they show weakness, they'll die. At least they think Kettle will kill them for some reason. They all start whacking the shit out of it, and we see its skull on the ground. Alessandro falls to his knees, but so do the other two, as they seem exhausted. Kettle says there's no doubt the ones that came with Mylena must have been strong after all. They get to the third floor, and there are even more skeletons. The number has increased, but with Kettle leading the front, they were able to proceed without difficulty. And finally, as everybody looks extremely locked in, they have made it to the deepest part of the dungeon now. They stand before a skeleton and a throne, and we learn that it's called a skeleton knight. Hayes says there's no way there's something like this here, and Kettle asks if it's different from the others they faced. They tell him that it's strong. Hayes says that a skeleton knight is a skeleton wielding a longsword and a shield. Unless it's a knight-level fighter, they had no chance of winning, and this is a monster they can't handle. Kettle asks what happens if they can't clear this and decide to retreat. Hayes says in that case, a confirmation will be requested from the territory, and if it's a reasonable decision, it'll be processed without an issue. Kettle smiles, and Hayes is confused on why he's walking forward. Kettle says that beating it is a reasonable decision, as the skeleton knight begins to awaken. The skeleton knight is now standing up, and Kettle says that a skeleton that maintains its form is very interesting. It then lowers down into its stance, and Hayes realizes this, telling them to watch out, as she puts up a barrier blocking its very wide-range attack. Her barrier begins to crack, and her face looks visibly strained as we see it shatter through her barrier. Alessandro then holds his shield up, blocking the attack for all of them, and it causes him to fall to the floor. Kettle seems curious, and Alessandro asks if it really had that much power in a single blow, and that this thing is way too strong for them. It starts glaring at Kettle and charging straight towards him. As it gets closer and closer to Kettle, he hits it in the chest with a single blow, absolutely deleting its torso and turning it into dust as well, as it falls to the ground. Again, all three of them are just sitting there in disbelief, and Kettle wipes the dust off his hands, asking if that's really all it was. We see all three of them are a little tense. Kettle then spots a chest, calling out to Kassen, who wonders what he wants. Kettle asks if he can unlock it, and Kassen says that's impossible. It is a high-level lock on it, and he doesn't have the skill to open it. Kettle says that's a shame, and Kassen says that's a pity, they'll need to leave it. Before he can finish his sentence though, Kettle's already walked up, punching the chest. We see Kettle actually shatter the chest open. I don't even know why they're getting surprised at this point. Kettle says the rewards are certainly better this way, telling Kassen to take care of it again. Kassen says yes, and he can't believe that he smashed a treasure chest open, as it's unheard of. But if he could just break it, why the hell did he ask him to unlock it? I wonder the same thing. We then see a bright light as they're starting to exit the dungeon. It then starts to make a rumbling sound. Kettle asks what's going on, and when they turn around, we see it close behind them. Kassen says that if you clear a dungeon perfectly, it disappears, and it seems like there wasn't a secret room. Kettle asks if they really exist, and Kassen says yes, though there's not many. Kettle laughs, saying that sounds fun, and Kassen just wonders what kind of psycho he is. We then head back to the guard captain, who says that there's no way they cleared it this fast. He then clears his throat, asking how it was, and Kettle says it was satisfying. He says if that's so, then he will proceed with the entry procedure, telling them all to follow one by one. Hayes says there weren't any major issues. The guard captain asks her if she thinks it's acceptable for a barbarian to stay in. She says that it should be fine. He can tell that she's trailing off the conversation a bit when Kettle is the subject. The entry procedure isn't just about clearing a dungeon. The true purpose is to use the process to weed out any bad elements. Kassen says that he doesn't seem like the type to cause trouble. The guard captain says that while Kettle possesses monstrous strength, he did not bring any harm to his party, and he's very different from a typical barbarian. Kettle says Kassen was excellent, and he disarmed traps and even opened a lock on a treasure chest. Alessandro was also a reliable warrior on the front line. The same goes for Hayes. Her prayers were a great aid in their battle. The guard captain asks if that's really the case, and says this is unusual. As when they force people to party, they don't say nice things about one another, then hands them their rewards. Often, the guards will take some of the dungeon clearing award, but he really doesn't feel like testing Kettle. Kettle tells them they can all divide it fairly, and they all tell him that they're fine and they don't want any. Kettle says why, as they all worked as a party together, so it must be shared fairly, and they can't refuse it. They agree, and he says they can go for a drink to celebrate, asking if they want to go to the pub. As they start heading toward the gate, Kettle is super excited while the other three aren't. The guard captain says that for a barbarian to defeat a skeleton knight in a single blow, he is hellishly strong. He's at least knight level or higher, but he was clearly not a typical barbarian. While he is a barbarian of legend, he is an alien existence. He realizes what he must do, telling the other guards that he has to go see the Lord, and he's going to leave them on their watch. He heads to the Lord's estate, and there's a knock on the door. The Lord says to enter, and the guard captain does so. The Lord asks what he wants. We are introduced to Luke Varkin, the Lord of this land. The guard captain says that the first captain is reporting to the Lord that a barbarian has appeared in their domain. Luke asks if he granted him permission. The first captain says that he judged that it wouldn't be a major issue. Luke asks what the problem is then. The first captain says that he's strong enough to be a problem. Luke asks how strong. He says that he took down a skeleton knight in a single blow. Luke looks genuinely surprised, as it is a monster that no one below the level of a knight can face, and he defeated it in a single strike. And that barbarians are simple, ignorant beings who solve everything through the logic of strength, asking if he's saying he's a first rate. The captain says that's a high probability. Luke asks what the possibility of him being stronger is, and he says that he cannot deny it. That's probably what the case is. Luke says to think a warrior of that caliber, and a barbarian of that, would be here is going to be an incredible headache. He tells the captain to summon him for now. The captain asks if he's sure that's wise. Luke says the very presence of such a powerful individual roaming the territory is a source of instability. It would put his mind at ease to see him with his own eyes. The captain warns him that it could be dangerous. And Luke says that fear not, as he is his knight here beside him. The captain looks genuinely surprised that he didn't even notice him, and Luke asks what his thoughts are. His knight says that he may possess some power, but he's just a barbarian, an ignorant brute with no intelligence. Before his swordsmanship, taught directly by the great sword master, he will be nothing. Luke nods his head, telling the captain to summon the barbarian, as he will speak with him himself. Back at the pub, Kettle is devouring all the food he can, while the other three just watch and are a little disgusted by how he eats like a pig. Kettle slams his ale on the table, saying this is delicious, and he loves the atmosphere. He also likes how quiet it is, and that it's his treat, so they can eat as much as they like. They laugh awkwardly, and Kettle asks Alessandro if he's a paladin. Alessandro says that's right, and Kettle asks what kind of divine power he uses, as they didn't see him use any while they were clearing the dungeon. Alessandro says that he's still in training, so his power hasn't awakened, and Kettle says that's a shame, as he wanted to see it. Alessandro awkwardly clears his throat, and then Kettle asks Hayes about her god, asking if there's a temple nearby. She says there isn't, and her god is not generally a very welcome deity, as again she is the god of lies and deceit, and she is shunned and cast out by the masses. She then gets a little nervous, but decides to do it, asking Kettle just how strong he is. Kassen and Alessandro are surprised. Kettle is very innocent, and says in terms of his rank, that it has not been long since he left home, so he's very curious, and he wonders how strong a skeleton knight is. They say that he needs to at least be a second-rate to face one, and a first-rate warrior could defeat it like he did. He asks if that's really considered second-rate, and then the waiter comes over nervously, saying that it's time for their shop to close, and Kettle apologizes, saying that they'll get going. He asks if everyone has plans or schedule, and they all instantly say they do, and they're hella busy, so they can't do anything with them. Kettle says that's a pity, as he supposes this is where they part ways, and he hopes to see them again. Of course, not a single one of them want to see him again, because they're scared. And then he finds a nice inn and lays down, saying this is the first time he's laid in a bed since coming here. It's a relief he can afford a room without any issues, thanks to the dungeon reward. And compared to the snowy plains, this is a paradise. Since waking up there, it took a long time for him to set foot in civilized lands, and he wonders what to do now, as he wants to experience and feel more things, and he wants to have a real adventure. The sacred ground of the elves, the magic tower, the royal capital, things in every fantasy world, and he can't wait to see them. As he falls asleep, we see the sun shining brightly through his window, and he wakes up in bed. He wipes the drool off his face, as there's a knock on the door. The first captain apologizes for waking him up, and Kettle asks what he wants. He clears his throat, saying that the Lord wishes to see him in person. Kettle says that for the Lord of the territory to want to meet him sure is surprising, but he's down as hell, and he asks if they should just go now. And if that's the case, he'll grab his clothes real quick before they leave. The captain just wonders if this is really the right guy, as he's going along with it so easily. They make their way through the city, and Kettle's looking around, saying that when he first entered it was nighttime, so he only got a rough look. But now seeing it in the daytime, it sure is interesting. He smiles, saying that this is all so cool, and it's just like out of a game. The captain just wonders what he's doing, and not much time is left, and he wants to go the back way so they don't keep sightseeing. They finally make it there, and the captain says he brought the Barbarian. Luke tells them to enter, and the door opens, and Luke stretches his hand out, saying he's pleased to meet him, introducing himself as the Lord of the territory to Kettle. Kettle says it's good to meet him, calling him by his title, and he tells him that he is the Barbarian Kettle, and he even does a respectful greeting. Luke is just surprised that the Barbarian is bowing his head, which is odd because barbarians never bow their heads. To them, strength is everything, but he guesses that living long enough lets you see it all. He says that it seems he has learned some manners, telling him to have a seat. Kettle does so, opposite of him. Then he looks around the room and is absolutely impressed, saying that being inside of a lord's castle is sick, and that he's always loved castles. Then he spots the knight guarding the lord. He says he used to play night games a lot as a kid, and he never thought he'd see a real one, and it's just like he imagined. His eyes are full of curiosity. The knight glances over and feels killing intent instead of curiosity, and says this is unmistakable. For him to reveal such bloodlust in the Lord's presence, he's going to have to deal with him. He calls him foolish, saying that he will not leave here alive. Luke tells him the reason he called him is simple, and there are a few things that he just wants to verify, and he'll let him go. Kettle tells him to go for it, asking what he wants to know. Luke asks where he came from, and Kettle says that's quite an important question to them. He comes from the coldest place in this world, from a world covered in white. They realize that he's talking about the white snowfield, and are both surprised as they realize he's the barbarian of legend, and that he is really standing before them. Luke says that his words are a little hard to believe, and Kettle says it was a miserable place. Whether they believe it or not is their choice. Luke then says he wants to rephrase the question, asking him how strong he is, as what matters is how dangerous Kettle's power is. Kettle says that's the wrong question, as he does not know the level of strength in this land. Luke says he sees, and glances up towards his knight, who understands what he wants. Luke asks if he would like to have a spar with his knight, and he'll reward him well for it. Kettle asks what would entail in the spar, and Luke says it's not a fight to the death, and he trusts he'll keep it within reason. Kettle laughs, saying that sounds good to him. Luke is surprised by his laughter. But to Kettle, for him to spar with a knight is going to be super cool. It's not just any knight, it's a fantasy world where knights wield mystical power and aura. It's a chance for him to see and feel such a figure's techniques up close, and he's so excited for it. Luke anxiously tightens the grip on his armrest, saying that a barbarian is a barbarian in the end of the day. No matter how polite they act, they can't hide their savage love of battle. They're just terrified, or they're just freaked out by his laughter. They then head out to the Colosseum, and Luke is watching up above. As the knight and Kettle have their WWE stare down, Luke says that hopefully no blood is shed. The bell is rung, and the knight tells him to consider it an honor to witness his swordsmanship. Kettle says that he's super excited, and the knight is just angry that he's so relaxed, saying that he's going to show him just how overwhelming the difference in strength is, as he charges in, enveloping himself in a green aura. He asks Kettle what he's going to do. As he starts to raise his sword, we see it projecting 3 blades out as he's thrusting straight towards Kettle's head. Kettle asks why the hell there are 3 blades. Kettle wonders if it's an illusion, but then dodges all 3, saying that it's definitely not, and that all of the swords are real, and he wonders if this is what he calls his swordsmanship. The knight says that it's just as he thought. It seems like this is the best he can do, which is dodging his attacks. He supposes that's impressive in its own right, but he's seen enough. As he comes in with his attacks once more, Kettle raises his hand slowly before flicking his finger, breaking the knight's blade. The knight asks what the hell this is. As Kettle puts his hand on his chest, he then slowly clenches his fist, wrinkling his armor entirely, and then throws him, breaking his chest plate, causing him to spit up blood. Luke is surprised as his knight's hands hit the ground. We see that he actually shattered the wall that he landed into, and even destroyed the ground from sliding. Bro's ass might be raw now. Luke says for him to defeat a top-tier knight in a single strike. He wonders what the hell kind of power he is dealing with. Kettle then turns, asking if this is it. Luke though is just uncertain of what to say, and starts freaking out internally. He clears his throat and is saying yes. For him to do this in a single strike, he is at least superhuman, but that's just the minimum. There's no telling the true depths of his power, and he could very well disrupt the balance of the world. In that case, he should report this to one of the few in this vast world who will hold the title of Swordmaster. He says that the Swordmaster should be arriving soon, and he wonders if this will pique his interest. I forgot to mention the Lord's back in his room by the way, and we hear the Swordmaster ask if he's talking about him. Luke turns, seeing his window open, and an old man in his room. Luke sighs, saying that his hobbies are as distasteful as ever. The Swordmaster says that he's got to have a little fun somehow, and asks if he's going to tell him about this matter that's supposed to interest him. This is the Swordmaster named Kane. Luke raises himself out of his chair, saying that it's an honor to have him visit on such short notice. He greets him, calling him Lord Kane. Kane stares at him as Luke is still bowing. His knight then starts to wake up in the infirmary. We see even his shirt got ripped. The door opens, and Luke asks if he's feeling well. The knight says that he'll be fine in a few days and apologizes. Kane says that it is he who should be apologizing, as his foolish student was defeated by some no-name barbarian. Kane then looks at his wound, realizing that there's not even a scratch, saying that there's not any damage on him. He saw that the armor was shattered to pieces, and judging by the state of the armor, he wouldn't have been surprised if his student was dead. And yet, besides some torn clothes, his body is completely unharmed. He wonders if the barbarian was showing him mercy. Realizing this, he says that he's not just some mindless barbarian, he's someone who can control his power with great precision. Kane says that so far, he exceeds a knight's level so far that he can afford to show mercy, so he must be at least superhuman. Luke and the knight are both surprised by this, and Luke clears his throat, asking if this is rude of him, but asks how he is compared to Kane. Kane says that he may be quite strong, but in the end, he is still a swordmaster. Even if he can wield superhuman strength, he won't be a match for him. Luke laughs, saying that's right, but then Kane says that it doesn't seem like he used aura, and for him to command such power without one, that's impossible through normal means. And he wonders if this is just the power of a barbarian from the White Wasteland. Luke says at first, he didn't believe it, but he really must be the barbarian of legends. Kane thinks about it, and the story about how there is a legendary human said to exist in the White Wasteland, or perhaps it would be better to call him something different entirely, as he may be a monster in human form. Kane says that there's no way though, and Luke asks what he means. Kane says that if he were something else, he wouldn't have bothered showing mercy to a human, and he must be mistaken. And he wonders why someone from the White Wasteland would appear now of all times. Luke asks if there's something wrong, and Kane says it's nothing, it's a matter for another time. The Emperor honestly makes some very peculiar requests. Kane says that he doesn't need to worry about it, and Luke says he sees. Kane then asks if the barbarian is still here, and Luke tells him that he said he would be staying, so he assumes so. Kane then turns and says he's going to have to go meet him himself. Captain asks Kettle what his plan is now, and he says that he's not sure. We learn that the Lord has already given him his reward for the duel, and says that he won't interfere in what he does in this territory. Kettle says that he doesn't have anything specific planned, but it would be good if he had an official status, as he thinks entering dungeons every time he goes to a new territory would become a problem. The captain says if that's the case, one way is to have someone of high status act as his sponsor and vouch for his identity. Or the other thing, Kettle asks what the other option is, and he tells him to become a mercenary. If he builds a track record as a mercenary and earns the guild's recognition, his status can be officially acknowledged. But unless a mercenary reaches a certain status, they're basically just errand boys. I think that's the captain when he was a mercenary. He says that with his strength, the sponsor would be the easier route, but Kettle is just surprised there's a way like that. As a mercenary, is someone who accepts requests to hunt monsters. It's the ultimate fantasy dream, and in that case, he'd ask where he has to go to become one. The captain tells him that there's a guild hall, and Kettle says he would appreciate it if he could show him the way. The knight captain is just curious as to why he wants to be a mercenary and says sure. Mercenaries are those who roam the world taking on requests. Some people see romance in their lives, but in reality, mercenaries without status belong to the very bottom of society. Even mercenaries of some scale often die trying to clear unidentified dungeons, and they're merely fodder for all kinds of dirty work. That's why the lower tier of mercenary society is filthy, disgraceful, and noisy. As inside the mercenary guild hall, we see somebody get smacked in the face as he falls to the floor. He gets back up, asking the other dude if he wants to scrap, and the dude tells him to bring it on. The other people are just watching, and they start making bets. And there's a woman at the receptionist just sighing as it's still happening. Her coworker calls out to her, asking how the new recruits are today, and we learn that the girl's name is Rosa, and she says that it's terrible, and they're all just weirdos. One's some lunatic claiming to be a paladin, the others are rogue, and the nun looks alright, but because of who she serves, no one trusts her either. And she just seems defeated. Her coworker says that's disappointing, and Rosa says that there's not a single decent person coming through, and that these muscle-headed mercs keep picking fights all day, and if only a cool, handsome prince on a white horse would appear and rescue her from this desk job. The door then opens, and she gets hopeful and looks up, spotting Kettle, and he asks if this is the guild hall. The guy stops fighting, and everybody looks over, asking if a barbarian really just entered the mercenary guild. Kettle is just excited to be there. He says that he's come to become a mercenary, and Rosa asks why he wants to become one, and she's very scared. He says there are several reasons, but he heard that working as a mercenary can get his status recognized. She says that's true, but in order for a mercenary to have their status recognized, he'll need to build up a lot of accomplishments, asking if he's okay with that. He says he is, and she says that she'll register him as a mercenary for 5 copper coins, asking for his name and age. Kettle tells her his name, but says that he's not sure for his age. She says that she'll just put down something reasonable then, and then hands him his registration and his mercenary badge, and it represents his status, so he can't lose it. Kettle looks down at it, and then picks it up, all excited, like a kid at Christmas. He asks what kind of jobs are available, and if he can take one on right away. She asks if he means requests, as they don't call them jobs, and that these are the ones he can currently take on. He asks if this is really all there is after looking at it, as it's just things like herb gathering, basement cleaning, sewer cleaning, street cleaning, and night patrol. She says that since he's an F-rank mercenary, these are the only ones he can do, and she hears that barbarians are proud, and she's scared that he might lash out, and that if he starts with simpler jobs and builds up his record, he'll eventually qualify for harder ones. He says that he'll take this one, and she wonders what it'll be, as he points to herb gathering. She asks if he's certain, and he says that this is the job, and he has no problem with it. He then asks where he has to gather them, and she says just outside the village, showing him an identification drawing of what they look like. He says that he'll head out now, and she says okay. She's just a little surprised by how chill he is, and then he leaves just like that. Her coworker is freaking out though. Kettle then heads into the woods, finding the herbs that look just like the drawing, and says that these herbs are good for wounds, but they look kind of strange. He takes off his shirt, and says that he's packed some UV protection gear, and it's time for him to begin his first job as a mercenary. About 1 hour later, he returns with a whole bag full of them, asking if this is enough, and she says that's a lot. She wonders if maybe he's a criminal mastermind here to destroy the herb field. She's then noticed something, saying they're in excellent condition, and most mercs just rip them out like savages, so their value drops significantly. He says that he may not look like it, but he's confident in his delicate touch. She says she understands, and thanks him for his hard work, giving him the reward for his request, which is 1 silver coin. It's enough to barely afford the cheapest meal, but still, It's the first money he's earned through honest work, and he's super excited about it. Turns out that he asked immediately for another request, and she can't believe how he's acting even though he's a barbarian. Kettle says the sun is still high, so he'd like to get as much work done as he can, and she wonders why he looks so happy, and she says that she thinks this new guy's a weirdo too. Kettle says that he'll go with this one next, as he's talking about the warehouse cleaning. But we see that he's actually marked off multiple other requests, and Rosa says that after herb gathering, this is the third cleaning task. She wonders if maybe he likes cleaning, and tells him that he should go ahead and accept it. Kettle then makes his way to the warehouse, entering it, and a woman looks over, and he says that he's here to clean. She starts freaking out, and he asks if she's the owner. She says that she is, but wonders why a barbarian is here. Kettle says cleaning the warehouse was simple. There was no issue with having to move the contents of the warehouse, and the next task was street cleaning, and that he just picked up a broom and started sweeping. At first, controlling his strength was tricky, but he did it with a lot of effort. We see somebody spying on him, and it's none other than Kane in a crazy getup, asking what the hell he's doing. He's clearly at least superhuman, someone powerful enough to shake an entire kingdom if he felt like it. In other words, just by revealing his power, he could be treated with honor anywhere. Yet here he is, a barbarian who could solve anything by force, doing menial chores. It's not like he's doing them half-heartedly. He's doing them seriously, with full effort, and Kane can't help but wonder why the hell Kettle's like this. Kettle's just enjoying his work. The next morning, the birds are chirping, and he starts to wake up. He steps out of bed and looks over, noticing a pouch on his table stand, and it turns out that it was from his work yesterday. Rosa said that he did great on his first day as a mercenary, giving him his reward for all quest. He did 15 in total, and each one gives him 1 silver coin, so he had a total of 15 silver coins now. He tells her that he's very grateful, and he'll be back tomorrow. He says it's time to begin his second day in civilization. It jumps to a little girl crying her eyes out, and all of the citizens looking worried as Kettle's walking down the street. He comes to a stop and looks over, spotting a library, and when he enters, the woman welcomes him, and he asks if he could read some of the books. Of course she's scared of him. Inside the library, he picks out some of the books and begins reading through them one after the other. The librarian is just speechless. Kane as well can't believe a barbarian is reading a book. He's not visible, but he can sense him no doubt. A barbarian known to be brutish and ignorant is reading. He wonders if they all have some sort of culture in this snow field that the other barbarians don't have, or if maybe Kettle is just special. Kettle closes the book and says that the Empire won in the end. A few years ago, Mylena came to the snow field saying she was going to sell weapons to the kingdom or the Empire, so the Empire won that war it seems. The current Empire is extremely powerful, and the Varkan kingdom is practically a vassal state. The Empire has already devoured half the human world, and continues its aggressive expansion as if trying to swallow the whole world. Kettle thinks about them doing world conquests, saying that's enough about human affairs, and he wants to look into something more interesting, and wants to see what's written about the non-human races. He says that there must be fantastical things written inside this book about all of the fantasy beings. He learned that the world's greatest cave overflowing with rare ores like garbage is the dwarven cave called Mantamia. There's the fairy village, Pirapia, and the sky city of celestials, Lega Maria, and the unreachable sacred ground, the sanctuary of all elves, which we know of because of the name, Marsilia. And that even powerful rulers have tried every means they have to uncover the location of Eflo Sagrado. He says that he guesses he's acquired the incredible qualification to even go there. He then realizes something, as there are other places like the White Snow Field, the Demon Zones, places that reject human presence and are filled with twisted alien things. There aren't a few demon zones, but this world holds 5 exceptionally vast ones. The Silent Forest, which dies all things in stillness. The Abyss, which drags the world into evil. The Deep Sea, where primates breathe and live. The Hollowing Pit, where nothing exists. And the White Snow Field. Inside these demon zones dwell terrifying monsters called aberrations. However, these demons cannot cross into the human realm. Kettle wonders how big this world is, as the White Snow Field alone is enormous, and there are multiple places just like it. He says that's all the information available here. He tells the librarian that he's very thankful she let him read the books. She says of course, and Kettle heads out back to the mercenary guild. He asks Rosa what kind of requests there are today. She's a little startled by him, and gives him today's request forms, and of course he's just excited. Kane says that he's so weird, and that he's gonna have to go confront him directly. That night, as Kettle was walking back home, he says that he handled another dozen or so requests today, and even the small ones add up, so it's pretty rewarding. At this pace, the day he's acknowledged as a true mercenary will come soon enough. We see Kane waiting around a corner, and when Kettle gets close enough, he steps out. Kettle wonders, "What's up?" as Kane is glaring at him. Kettle says he knows he's been tailing him all day. Kane's surprised that he could tell, and Kettle asks him what he wants. Kane says that he definitely suppressed his presence completely, and no matter how sharp someone's senses are, detecting his presence should be impossible. Kettle wonders if maybe he's a bandit, and starts to cover his gold. Kane cannot believe that this is what he's thinking. Kettle says that since he's not answering, so he thinks his guess must be right. Even though security here seems decent, there are still bandits around. Kane says no, and doesn't even know if he'd believe him if he said he was a source master. Kettle then hits him with a stray, saying that robbing at such an old age is pathetic, and that the economy must be worse than he thought. He thinks about it, saying that taking him down and turning him in would make for a good record as a mercenary as well. Kane is confused, but says that this might be a good opportunity since he thinks he's a bandit. Taking him directly might be the best way to gauge his strength and identity. Kettle starts to walk forward, and Kane looks a little anxious. As Kettle begins wobbling a little bit, he disappears directly in front of Kane. Kane wonders where he went, and then Kettle reappears directly in front of him. Kettle stretches toward him, and Kane says that if he stands still, he's going to grab the back of his neck, as Kane avoids. Kettle is curious, and says that's not bad at all, as Kane has distanced himself now. Kane says there's no way that he almost got him. If his reflexes were even slightly slower, he'd have been caught, but more shocking than that, he couldn't sense a single trace of aura from him. Kettle says that's interesting, and Kane can't believe he moved that fast with nothing but a pure human body. He says that he needs to forget the test, as this is real, and he charges in, saying that he's going to go all out. Kettle readies himself before disappearing once more, and grabs onto Kane's arm. Kane says that he expanded his perception, and still he couldn't react. Kettle starts bending his wrist, and Kane says this isn't just being grabbed, it's like having his arm jammed into solid rock, with his whole body dragged along. Kane starts screaming out, asking what the hell's with his strength. And he says that it's not even a competition in terms of power, and in that case, he's going to have to go full force and release his power. As his aura begins surging, Kettle notices it. As he feels it flowing out of Kane, Kettle can't help but be surprised by it. Then an explosion of the green aura erupts, and Kane distances himself from Kettle, as Kettle's holding onto the aura in his hand. Kane looks at him, ready for the next attack, and Kettle says that bandits these days sure have all kinds of techniques. Kane can't believe that he still thinks he's a bandit. Kane says that manifestation of mana, a level only the most elite can reach, and that he has cloaked his entire body in it, so why would someone like him resort to being a bandit, and he can't believe that Kettle truly believes this. Kane thinks about it for a second, saying that he reflexively manifested his mana, and that manifested mana can shred through solid steel with ease, and human bodies should have just been obliterated from contact, yet Kettle is unscathed, and he wonders what's with his body since he can endure manifested mana without having to use his own. Kettle says he doesn't know what trick he is using, but he thinks it's time to wrap this up. Kane reaches for his blade, but then is surprised by something as Kettle has already closed the gap and is stopping him from unsheathing it with just a single finger. Kane continues to try, but realizes it's not going anywhere and can't believe what he's witnessing. He then starts grunting and tries his best to unsheath it, as we see the hilt of his sword being bent. He then realizes this is bad as Kettle stretches his hand out towards him. Kane sheds a single tear, saying that this is the end. Kettle continues, and a bit later he says that sure was interesting as he's carrying Kane on his shoulder. He says he can't believe that a bandit in a fantasy world had such techniques. Later, the guard captain asks what the meaning of this is, as Kettle stretches his hand out, holding Kane up in the air like he's some kind of dog he caught in his yard. The captain just wonders why the hell Kane is here of all places, and wonders if maybe Kettle attacked him, wondering what's going to happen now. But Kettle tells him he caught a bandit. The guard captain can't believe that's what happened here, and Kettle says that if he hands him over, then it should count towards his mercenary record, asking if he's right. The guard captain has no idea what the hell to make of this. He starts thinking about what this scene is. Kane is a man who has reached the highest level of superhuman skill, and that he was caught by a barbarian in a very humiliating position, no less. The guard captain tells him that he's actually not a bandit, and Kettle asks if he knows him, and if he's an accomplice of his. The guard captain puts his legs together and formally bows, saying that he pays his respects to the swordmaster, and the only swordmaster in their kingdom. Kettle looks down, confused, as Kane just refuses to look up. Kettle wonders why a swordmaster is going around posing as a bandit, and says that's impossible, as he attacked him to steal his silver coins. The guard captain says that he really is a swordmaster, and he'd never mistake the face. Kettle wonders if he could be a mage using illusion magic. The guard captain says that if there's a mage powerful enough to do that, he'd already be as respected as a swordmaster. Kettle asks if maybe swordmaster is a fancy name for bandits. The guard captain asks what the hell he's even talking about. There's awkward silence, and Kettle asks if he's really the swordmaster, and the guard captain says that's right. Kettle is starting to have an existential crisis, and the guard captain says he's going to report this to the Lord. Luke slams his table, yelling, asking if Sir Kane really lost. It then jumps to Kettle apologizing, saying that he should have let him explain. Kane says that he's to blame for not saying anything, and they have awkward silence right after. Luke wonders what's going on, as he expected Kane to seek out the barbarian for a duel, but he did not expect that he would lose. He doesn't know the details, but he's certain that it was indeed a loss, meaning that the barbarian is stronger than the swordmaster. Of course, there are levels even among superhumans, and Kane only recently became one, so he's likely on the lower end. Still, a swordmaster is one who has earned the noble title of Master of the Sword. Kettle beat him, meaning that he is completely unmanageable. Luke says that his head hurts, and it seems that there is a misunderstanding, and he's going to excuse himself, and that the two of them should probably talk things through. He then heads out, leaving the two of them sitting there. Kettle stares at him, as Kane sweats nervously, saying that this is humiliating, and yet he can't even argue, as it was a perfect defeat. His pride isn't just hurt, it's tattered like a used rag. He puts his teacup down, saying that he would like to properly introduce himself, and he does so to Kettle. Kettle asks if Swordmaster is his surname, and Kane tells him that once someone reaches the state that he is in, surnames become meaningless. Kettle says he sees, asking what that technique he showed him was. Kane is surprised that he is curious, and starts to pull out his aura, asking if he means this. Kettle starts to get excited, saying at first he thought it was just a bandit's trick and didn't pay much mind, but now that he knows it's a swordmaster's skill, he's very interested. Kane tells him that it's the embodiment of the arcane, also called aura. Kettle is excited that he's finally getting to see aura from someone so prestigious in this fantasy world, and he starts to ask him if he can teach him how to use it. Kane says that he has to manifest it by controlling the arcane. Kettle asks if the arcane is like mana. Kane tells him that the arcane is the mystical energy itself. When you use it as aura, you're a swordsman, when you use it as mana, you're a mage. Kettle says that it's interesting that both types of people use it, asking if he'd be willing to teach him, that embarrassingly he still is lacking knowledge, and he's trying to learn to make up for it. He asks him to teach him, and he even says please. Kane says okay, but asks if he really needs his guidance, because he's stronger than he is. Kettle says he doesn't know anything about arcane or swordsmanship, and he just swings blindly. Kane asks if he's certain, but copes, saying that he's a swordmaster, and he may have lost, but he didn't even draw a sword, and that he'll teach the barbarian the way of the sword, and show him his greatness, so he can reclaim his shattered pride. He says very well, and that without his sword, he is but half a man anyways. Kettle says he figured as much, and no wonder he was so weak, it's because he didn't get to draw it. Kane, feeling a little defeated, says that's exactly it. Kettle says that to be called a swordmaster at just that level of strength, he thought something was off, and that if he actually used a sword, he might have won. Kane, though, is not too certain about that. While Kettle is excited for their lesson, Kane just wonders if his self-esteem is going to recover, as he feels like he's just going to grow more and more insecure. Kettle says that before he arrived here, he actually learned swordsmanship. But this is real fantasy swordsmanship, a strange kind of swordsmanship that manipulates the arcane aura, and it's truly what he wants to learn. Cain tells him that the key trait of his swordsmanship is the embodiment of illusion of reality, asking if he saw that when he fought his disciple. Kettle says he didn't think that Knight was his disciple, but now that he mentions it, his sword split into 3, and all of them were real. And if that's what he means by embodiment, wondering it's a technique based more on skill than strength. Cain says that's correct. Swordsmanship is the art of merging sword and aura to wield the arcane, and the one who reaches the end of that path becomes a sword master. Cain starts to imbue his sword with aura, and Kettle says that's so cool and looks really excited. Cain says it is, and while he still can't believe it's happening, he decides that if he's going to teach him barbarian swordsmanship, he needs to go all out. He says that the embodiment of illusion of reality sounds a bit abstract, so he'll just show him directly. Cain locks in and swings forward with his sword covered in aura and shatters the ground with its attack, but then it splits out into 5 separate attacks. Kettle's surprised, seeing that his strike actually split into 5, and it even reached the other side of the room. Cain says there are many techniques that create illusions using aura, but giving those illusions substance, only his swordsmanship can do that. Kettle mentions the technique, and Cain asks if he was impressed with it. Kettle says he feels like he could do it too, and Cain is just confused, asking what kind of nonsense he's talking about. He devoted his entire life to the sword, combined his natural talent with grueling effort, and he barely reached the swordsmanship through all that. There's no way someone could copy it just from seeing it once. Kettle says it'll be faster just to show him. As he grabs onto something, which we see is actually an axe, Kettle widens his stance and raises the axe behind him. Kettle then starts attacking, and we see it's actually multiple attacks. Cain is surprised but says that that shit is not what he showed, and that this is nothing but pure brute strength, but he does copy the attack's path 1-to-1. But it's much more powerful, as it causes a giant explosion. Cain is surprised, and we see the axe starting to smoke, and Kettle asks him how it was. Cain says that it looks just like what he showed, though it was due to overwhelming speed and strength, and he even almost got tricked for a second. He says that what he did was simply swing with force, and there was no technique behind it. Kettle reminds him that the result was nearly the same, and swordsmanship is meant for real combat. As long as the results are similar, that's good enough. Cain thinks about it and says that he can't really argue, but that shit hurts his pride. He says in that case, he wants to see him try this. As this time, instead of his sword, his body starts separating into multiple. This time, it shoots out a giant aura attack that creates an explosion. What did the training ground do to deserve this? Cain says that this is bodily separation achieved through extreme mastery of aura, and he asks Kettle if he can copy this. Kettle turns and starts walking to the side for some distance, and then he raises his axe and starts doing his best to copy it, as we see shadowy figures start to appear from him. Cain is surprised, as they're now floating around him just like his was, and it creates a giant tornado of purple aura that even destroys the entire area. Cain falls to his knees crying, saying that that was a lifetime's work, and he can't believe his swordsmanship is so worthless. He says this can't be, and Bro starts to suffer from a heart attack. Kettle says that his mental is like toilet paper, and if he wiped with him, he'd poke his ass. He tells him that his swordsmanship is remarkable. Cain looks up, and Kettle says that he merely swung his axe quickly, and it was not true swordsmanship. The technique he showed wasn't a mere afterimage, it was real, and he can't reach true arcane mastery. Cain holds back his tears, saying that's right, his swordsmanship is still valuable, and this is something only he can do in this world. The problem is not his technique, it's just that Kettle is a damn lunatic, and he wonders what kind of crazy person can be so fast they become a blur without even using aura. That's not something that a human should be capable of. Kettle asks if he could teach him the true meaning of technique, and Cain freezes up, saying that he actually let his emotions get the better of him, and he's sorry. He tells him he understands, and Cain clears his throat, saying to use true technique, you must first learn aura control. But to control aura, you must first comprehend the arcane. No mage, swordsman, or witch can reach the higher realm without awakening the arcane. The only ones exempt are those who believe in gods. Kettle asks if divine power is a separate thing then, and Cain says that their miracles come directly from their gods, and it's unrelated to individual ability. Kettle's interested in this, and Cain says that the arcane means exactly that. It's the mysterious power within oneself, and how you wield that power determines everything. Kettle says that for him to use aura, gain mana, or control spirits, it all starts with him understanding arcane, and we learn that the arcane has 5 stages. The most basic of this is arcane perception. It's the stage of knowing, awakening, sensing the arcane. Kettle asks if not anyone can sense it, and Kane tells him that unless one has talent, they can't even feel it. Those who can sense it are called third class. The ability to handle arcane is divided into 5 grades, third class at the first level. Kettle recalls him hearing something similar 5 years ago from Mylena, saying that this must have been what she was talking about. Kane says that it's just a convenient classification, and there are huge differences even within a class, and the boundaries aren't clear. He just wants him to know the concept exists. Kettle says he understands, and Kane says they should begin, saying that the first step of the arcane is arcane perception. Kane tells Kettle to feel everything around him. To sense the arcane means awakening a perception he's never known, and he needs to expand his senses to the fullest. He needs to feel the wind brushing past him, feel the touch of the earth, and perceive everything in the wind as it sways, and within it, feel a separate presence. Kettle sits there, focusing on trying to feel it, but then snaps out of his concentration, saying that he can't feel shit. Kane is just surprised, to the point he doesn't really know what to say at first, and asks if he's certain, as he thought someone of his strength would easily do it. As it's not a rule, but those who are strong, even without mana, tend to sense it easily. But he supposes a barbarian is an exception to the rule, and says that it might be a peculiarity of the White Wasteland. Kettle says he doesn't know, and has no one around who has ever sensed anything like the arcane, as they don't even have brains. Kane tells him that sensing the arcane isn't easy even for most, and he wants to try channeling energy into him directly to open his path. Kettle gets excited, asking if he's going to transfer aura. Kane says something like that, and Kettle tells him he's really ready. Kane says alright, and then gets up, telling him to relax completely, and focus inward, and center his senses in his body, and then focus on feeling the mana he is channeling into him. Kane's then surprised, saying that his body is crazy, wondering if he's even a human. It feels like solid stone, and if you really compress his muscles to this point, saying there's no way this is human. Kettle asks if he's okay, and Kane says that his mind wandered, telling him that he's ready to begin. He'll start with the aura flow. What's important is awakening the arcane path within him, and finding that path is the goal. That's not that hard on its own, but then he thinks about it, wondering what's going on, as he can't find the arcane path inside of his body. Rather, he can't reach it. Kettle is just sitting there blissfully ignorant, thinking it's working. Kane says no matter how far he extends his aura, it touches nothing, and sees nothing. It's like swimming in a deep abyss. Rather, it's like being crushed by the pressure of the deep, and tells him that it won't work. He clears his throat, and Kettle just wonders what's wrong, and if he's saying that he lacks the talent. Kane says that it's not that. It's just channeling aura into him is not enough. To find the arcane, he must find the path within and awaken the dormant force. Kettle says he heard him mention that before. And Kane tells him that he just couldn't find the path to his arcane. Kettle wonders what's up, asking if it means he can't sense the arcane at all. Can't sense, that's not it. He couldn't even confirm if it's there. Kettle asks what it means, then. And Kane tells him that his body is unnatural. To find the arcane, aura must reach deep inside, but his body is too dense. His aura couldn't even reach far enough inside, and he's never seen this before. Saying maybe his raw physicality is interfering with aura. Kettle says that even a swordmaster can't help him, and he sighs, asking if he'll never gain the arcane. Kane tells him it's hard to say, and he couldn't confirm either way. He couldn't even tell if the path exists within him, and he should consult a swordmaster more skilled with aura, or go to the mage's tower, and either way he's sorry. Kettle says it's fine, as there's still a chance, and that's enough for him now. He then sits up, saying that he's learned a lot from him, and he appreciates it. Kane is still just surprised, saying that every barbarian he's met was uncontrollable. They looted, perma-drank, and live for violence, so society casts them out, but this one is different. And he asks if he would consider joining the kingdom. Kettle asks what he means, and Kane tells him that he wants him to pledge loyalty to the kingdom and receive a rank. With his strength, He could raise high, and he'd even sponsor him. Kettle tells him the offer is interesting, but he refuses, as he does not want to be tied down. Kane realizes, though if they had him, they would even shake off the Empire's control. Kane asks if even being a noble rank would tempt him, as that's a huge offer. Kettle thinks about it, and says that he would rather just enjoy his own freedom. Kane realizes he can't be controlled, and tells him that he understands. Kettle then thanks him, saying that he will not forget his kindness. Kane thinks that it sure is a shame, and later we see him walking away, and he talks to himself, saying that he was being ridiculous. He thought he could control him even for a moment, but that is impossible, as he acts by his own will alone. He may work with others, but that's all. Inside, it's only his thoughts. Not knowing what he's thinking might make him even more difficult than other barbarians. A being from the demon realm, and a barbarian of the White Wasteland sure is crazy. He sighs, saying that conquering the demon realm is a crazy goal, wondering what the Emperor is thinking. It jumps to Luke being informed about this, saying that it sounds ridiculous. Kane says that people are dying in the name of reconnaissance, and Luke asks if he's serious. Kane says yes, and maybe he's some kind of reborn emperor from the past. Either way, it's a matter for the future. They haven't even conquered all of humanity's domain yet. Luke says that it's only a matter of time, and Kane says that the land is still part of the Empire, so they could be summoned any time, and it's best to be prepared. Luke thanks him, and Kane sighs, saying that the world's already a mess, and now the Emperor's gone mad, and it sure is a headache. Luke's then surprised, asking if the rumors are true. Kane says they are, and the demons have started to move. Luke looks worried, and Kane says that dungeon outbreaks aren't normal either, and it's not confirmed, but some say the taint of the demon realm is leaking out, and that something's happening, and whatever it is bad for humans. But then again, maybe the strangest thing is already among them. Luke says that it's true, and Kane asks what he thinks. Luke says that he doesn't know. At the very least, he does understand that he's not an enemy, but beyond that, he cannot say. And of course, they're talking about Kettle. Back in town, Kettle's walking somewhere and spots something, as there's a little kid scared with his mother. Another villager also hides from him, and Kettle thinks about it, asking if they're scared of him because of his clothes. He says maybe it's because he's not wearing proper clothes, and he says that a beast hide vest is fine and all, but he guesses it doesn't exactly scream civilized. They probably think he's insane and want nothing to do with him. Of course, he's just misunderstanding, and he realizes what he must do, saying that it's time to go buy some actual clothes. He heads to a clothing store, and when he enters, the guy goes to welcome him, before getting terrified. Kettle says he wants to buy some clothes. The guy apologizes, saying they have nothing in his size. Kettle says that's troublesome, asking if there's no other way. He says if he's willing to wait, they can make a custom order for him. Kettle asks if that's really an option, saying that he would love that. The worker says of course, and they'll contact him when it's ready, but is scared to think about what will happen if Kettle doesn't like the clothes, and if he'll really survive in the end of this. Later on the way to the mercenary guild, he spots a little bead on the ground and goes to pick it up, wondering what a gemstone like this is doing on the floor. It starts shining brightly, and he wonders what it is, and decides that he'll go ask Rosa about it. He then asks her if she knows what this is, saying that he picked it up on the way here. She says it does not look like an ordinary orb to her, and Kettle says he thought the same. And she says that it does not look like a gemstone either. The surface is smooth, and it seems like it has been carved or worked on by someone. There's no markings or names. And we see her eyes starting to go a little hazy, and she wonders if it holds any value. Kettle snaps his fingers, causing her to come back to her senses, and she sits there blankly. He asks if she's alright, and she asks what he means. He says that it looks like she was entranced by the orb, and she asks if he's certain. He tells her to forget about it, and she says that it's hard to figure out, but it feels like there's some strange energy coming from it, and wonders if he wants it appraised. He says that he appreciates it, but he'll do it himself, as it's part of the fun. Then he asks what jobs are available, and she says that she'll get the request form. She hands it to him, and we see it's street cleaning, sewer cleaning, weed pulling, and potato digging. He looks really excited. That night, we see his reward baggie on his nightstand, and he says that it was another fulfilling day. but he really wonders what's the deal with this orb, as Rosa looked like she was losing her mind over it, and he wonders what kind of function it has. He then realizes something, as he hears a voice saying to come to him. He wonders if it really just spoke to him, and inside of his mind, it just keeps saying to follow, and Kettle wonders where it's trying to lead him. He says that it's showing him a map in his head, saying it might be some kind of domination magic. It continues, and he thinks about it. Looking out the window, he says that there probably wouldn't be any harm to doing it. It continues, and Kettle says he is telling it to shut up. He then stops walking, as he looks up, spotting a cave, wondering if this is the right place. He smiles, as we see a skeleton's eyes. It continues, and Kettle says he's here, wondering where the body behind the voice is. The skeleton says that yet another sacrifice has walked in, this time with some dumb barbarian, and it's big enough to make a good offering at least. With this, that makes 10 now, and this must be a dream. And even resurrection might be possible. Poor guy is in for a world of hurt. We learn that in the past, during the Age of Great War, when many kingdoms fell, behind it all was an evil mage who manipulated and disturbed people's emotions. He controlled the minds of countless kings, incited war, and ruled over the kingdoms. But eventually, his atrocities crossed the line and caught up with him, and he was hunted down by heroes. However, just before his downfall, he had already transferred his soul into a life vessel, allowing him to become a lich. A lich is a being that, if it uses a soul into a life vessel, is undying until that vessel is destroyed. Thus, the once world-dominating evil mage became a lich and began planning his resurrection. Since he needed many lives to be sacrificed for his revival, he settled near a remote fief and began spreading bewitching orbs, slowly luring in sacrifices. He offers sacrifices to form the mana core needed for revival, and once again plans to conquer the world using great power. His goal was steadily drawing closer to success. It turns out that he picked Kettle's territory because it's a remote one, and he needed to grow his power in secret. So he chose a secluded place far from the public, and that's why the presence of a barbarian here is very unusual. He says the creature, from the north, sure came a long way, and judging by his size, he'll make a fine offering. The orb was enchanted with a special effect. It only lures in those who have not awakened to the arcane. Therefore, those drawn in by the orb are people ignorant of the arcane. That would mean the barbarian is just another ordinary soul with no sense of arcane. So, for him to seem unaffected, it must be a fluke. He continuously watches, saying that he's going to be fuel for his resurrection. Kettle finally arrives at some doors, saying this must be the place. He walks forward and then is surprised, as what he meets is the lich before him, who's ready to offer him up. Kettle asks if it's really a lich. It's the realm only reached by mages who have reached the extreme, the ultimate fantasy villain always present in these kinds of stories, and he can't believe he's seeing one in person. The lich asks what the barbarian is doing, and if he wasn't lured by the orb. Kettle says that must be how he's been luring people here and laughs. The lich says that he doesn't sense arcane from him, and he's meant to just be a normal barbarian, so for him to be unaffected, now he thinks it's just a mental protection artifact, and a high-grade one, no less, powerful enough to block his senses. He doesn't know how a barbarian could possibly have such a thing, but it looks like he got lucky and stumbled upon a good artifact before coming here. Kettle says he doesn't have anything like that, and the lich says that he can't lie to him. If he had quietly fallen under the spell, he could have died painlessly, but now he's gonna have to crush him by force. As he summons some skeletons to deal with him. As they start charging in, Kettle says that a dungeon with an evil lich inside sure is a fun encounter, and he's starting to understand what's going on. The skeleton leaps towards him, and Kettle smacks the piss out of its head, deleting it. The lich is surprised as he sees it turn into dust, and Kettle says that it's pretty flimsy, a lot worse than he expected. The lich grows a little nervous, saying that he'll see if his tongue still works when his arms and legs are gone, and he just needs him alive, even if it's barely. He summons even more skeletons, saying to cut him down. He's just going to have to get rid of the lich. He clenches his fist, then smacks one of their heads off, and follows up, hitting another one with the left, and then another with a high kick, and slams the final one into the ground. The lich is utterly speechless, and Kettle says it's just as he thought. Kassen was right, if he destroys the head, they die. And being a lich, he figured he'd at least summon a death knight or summon dead, and he can't believe it's just skeletons. The Lich can't believe he's catching strays like this and says that he's done playing nice. His staff begins to glow brightly, and we see him summoning a skeleton knight, and Kettle recognizes it, saying that for him to see one here again is pretty interesting. But he says that since it's created by a Lich, it might be different, and that it's going to be interesting. The Lich stretches his hand out, telling his minion to kill him, as it runs towards Kettle. Kettle clenches his fist, saying that a skeleton knight crafted by a Lich surely must be different. As the skeleton knight prepares an attack, Kettle hits it in the stomach, sending it flying across the cave, and its armor explodes upon its crash. From the dust, we see the skeleton coming back, rather, it's slowly crawling towards him. Kettle, surprised, says that it's actually tougher than the rest. The Lich then begins to open the skeleton knight's mana to its limit, as it's now surging straight towards him. Kettle watches, wondering what the skeleton knight is doing. As it flies in towards Kettle, he says that he's honestly a little disappointed by a skeleton knight created by a Lich. He clenches his fist before hitting it in the head, sending it flying backwards once more, creating yet another explosion. Kettle waits for a second to see if it comes back, and the Lich is just surprised. Of course, the knight didn't come back up this time, and Kettle steps on its hand, saying it's unusual, but not all that different in the end, asking if this is all he has to offer. The Lich asks who he is. He still can't sense any arcane from Kettle, and if he were using an artifact, he'd sense some mana, but there's none of that either, and that this must purely be his own strength. He took down a skeleton knight with nothing but raw strength, and he doesn't even know if something like that is possible, and he tells Kettle he's special. Kettle wonders what he's doing now, and the Lich says that he shall deal with him himself, and that he should consider it an honor. As it all starts to go black around Kettle, he's super excited, and looks back towards the Lich, as all we see is his eyes glowing. He asks if he's afraid, telling him this is good, and he's going to pay the price for trespassing upon his sanctuary. Kettle says he only came because the orb summoned him, and he thought he was the one who did it. The Lich says that's right. In fact, everyone who ended up here had been lured in by the orbs he scattered, and Kettle was no exception. He tells him to be quiet, as he is the great and mighty sorcerer, the one who brought down 5 kingdoms and clashed with heroes. And he tells him, his name is Cardos Branilius Kessis. Kettle asks why the hell everybody's titles and names are so long in this world. Cardos's staff starts to have this weird effect around it, and he tells him to become the cornerstone of his resurrection. As it flies in towards Kettle, we see it stop right before him and swirl. As he's staring at it wondering what it's going to do, we see that his eyes are looking affected. It is a magic that controls humans' emotions. It draws out negative feelings and traps its victims in them, rendering them paralyzed and mentally broken. It's a unique spell developed by Cardos. It's nearly invincible, considering how little mana it consumes. He says a mere barbarian who can't even wield an arcane will stand no chance against his great magic, and he wonders what to do next. He says there's something off about Kettle, and it does not look like he's wearing any artifacts, so he'll just catch him and study him. He tells his skeleton soldiers to capture him and take him away, as they start to spawn in once more. Kettle walks forward, as do the skeleton knights, but we see Kettle's eyes are back to normal again. He kicks the skeleton upwards, blowing its head off once more into dust, and looks back towards Cardos, who just wonders what the hell is going on. Yet again, there's another giant explosion. Cardos says that he was sure the mind control spell worked perfectly. Kettle asks if he was really just standing there watching, and if he was trying to catch him with skeletons again. He says that he's honestly pretty bored of this. Cardos can't believe that's another stray, saying that humans are creatures ruled by emotions. No matter how powerful, deep within their hearts, they all carry some form of negativity. However, he doesn't know why that doesn't work on Kettle, as Kettle asks if he can use a fireball or magic missile. Cardos says he does not know how he's still standing, but he does not like that he's comparing his magic to low-tier spells. He says that he'll show him. As he starts to actually chant something for a summon, we see it starting to form inside of an orb, and he says that it's going to swallow the world and drown all clarity and chaos. Kettle, of course, is really impressed. As from the middle of it, something begins to appear. As Cardos stretches his hand out, it flies towards Kettle, and we see it completely engulf him. Cardos is cackling, saying that victory is his, and he spits up some ink or something and falls to his knees, saying that he overdid it. He spent all of his mana, except the bare minimum to keep his body together, but with this, at least the barbarians dealt with. Kettle tells him that was impressive, and Cardos can't believe he's still standing, and Kettle asks if that's all he had. Cardos says he can't believe this didn't work. He used the strongest dark spell in his entire arsenal. Even if it were a great hero, their mind would have shattered completely, and he wonders what Kettle really is. Kettle says it was impressive, but he didn't really feel anything from it, and if that was the end of his show, then he supposes it's his turn to deal with this now, as he puts his axe up to his shoulder. Cardos says that he sees and starts laughing. Kettle asks what's up, and Cardos says that he came here knowing who he is, and this confirms it. Kettle asks what the hell he's talking about, and Cardos laughs, saying that the Empire is so afraid of him that they sent him, and he must complement their intelligence network. To track him down this quickly is impressive, but he will rise again, and he will shatter their blades and rule the world once more. Cardos says he once heard that deep within the Empire lies a human breeding ground, a place where countless unique talents are raised, and that Kettle must have come from there. They blade forged solely to kill him, an assassin sent by the Empire, and he starts howling, saying even so, that he will kill him and overturn the Empire. Kettle wonders what the hell this dude's deal is as Cardos starts to summon some kind of spiritual vase. It turns out that it's just his soul. It flies towards Kettle, and Cardos says to give him his body. When he hits Kettle, Kettle's hesitant for a second, and we learn that Cardos's plan is to enter his body and directly devour his mind. And then once he does this, unless he becomes a lich again, he'll have to live in Kettle's body forever. And he says that he has no options left. Cardos starts laughing, saying that this body is his. But inside of Kettle's mental realm, Cardos is confused, wondering what's going on. To say that he's never seen anything like this, and something is wrong. Just perceiving this world is corrupting and collapsing his mind. He says there's no way the Empire did this, and he starts having a mental breakdown, saying that even the Empire couldn't create something like this. As his entire mind begins to break and collapse, his final words were nothing but huh. Kettle asks what the hell that was about as he just did something to himself and collapsed. The black swirling current was kind of cool, but that was it. He thought a lich was supposed to be a mage's final evolution, and was really curious to see what magic he'd use. He's honestly so disappointed. He says that liches in this world must not be impressive. Either way, he cleared the dungeon, so we should claim his reward. He picks up his staff, saying it glowed when he used magic, but he wonders if it helps cast spells, and if he could use magic too. He then picks up a mana crystal or something and says that he'll keep this to himself and puts it in his pocket. He then looks at the vase and says that since it belonged to a lich, it could be a life vessel, and that he'll ask Rosa to appraise it. He says he's probably gathered all the rewards, but something seems suspicious around here. He then spots it and walks over to the wall and asks if this could be a hidden room. He pokes at it and then starts to open, but rather it just falls apart. But yes, he's correct. He then enters, and we see multiple people lined up against the wall. This was his hidden sacrificial chamber. Kettle says that he's surprised there was a hidden room, but he wonders what all these people are doing here. He waves, asking if there's anybody there, even getting right into their faces. And of course, there's no reply. He wonders what exactly he should do and says that he should head back to the estate for now. Once he explains the situation, they'll probably send over people to take care of this. He enters the guild hall and walks over towards Rosa. She's excited to see him, saying that he's a bit early today. He says he had some things to deal with, and she asks what they were. He says yesterday he showed her the orb and tells her the story. She says that he must be joking, and he says that he's not. She says that a lich is one of the only 5 in the world, and there's no way it'd be in a backwater place like this. He then pulls out the vase, saying that he brought back a jar that looks like the leech's life vessel, asking if she can appraise it. She sits there for a second, wondering if she's being pranked, and then freaks out, saying that he wasn't joking. She's still trying to process what's going on. And Kettle tells her that there were a few people inside as well. He thought about bringing them out, but their minds were gone, so he left them. And it would be best if the guild sent someone to check. She says come to think of it, there have been several disappearance cases in the territory, but no news of any of them ever being found. And if those were the work of a lich, it would make sense. She tells him to wait a moment, as she'll call for someone immediately. The guard captain runs in, asking if there's really a lich, and Kettle says it's good to see him here, but tells him that it's all been taken care of, so there's nothing to worry about. The guard captain asks what he means, and then starts screaming Kardos's name. Kettle says that's what he said it was, asking if he knows him. The guard captain says of course he does. Kardos was a sorcerer who flipped the world upside down over a century ago. He's the creator of magic that manipulates emotions, causing endless chaos. He drove kings mad, and brought ruin to 5 kingdoms. And he can't believe he was here as a lich. He then asks if this is really true. Kettle says it was, but he wasn't impressive. He just kept doing weird things on his own, and ended up self-destructing. The guard captain asks what he's even saying, and that's absurd. There was no way a mage like Kardos would self-destruct, and he wants a better explanation. Kettle says that even if he wants that, he can't tell him much more, as that's what happened. The guard captain, confused, tells him to wait for a moment, as he's going to go inform the Lord. Luke's freaking out that there was a lich right next door, asking if he's sure, and if it could have been a different kind of monster. The guard captain says based on the testimonies of the people who were rescued, it's not likely, and they also have physical proof. Luke asks if he means the phylactery. A lich at that level hiding near the estate unnoticed, and that this means the Empire may dispatch investigators at any moment. Of all times, with Cain being away from the estate, this is going to be an insane headache. He puts his hands on the table, saying to prepare some word to the capital. Luke says that perhaps they were still lucky. The guard captain says yes, if Kettle hadn't found it, they might have been the first victims. Kardos was likely in the midst of preparations to resurrect. So it's very likely that things would have gone really bad. Luke says that is definitely possible, and even so, this is a remarkable feat, and they have to give him a reward fitting of it, assuming they can offer something adequate from their own means, that is. The next day, in the Lord's estate, there's banging and yelling at the door. Luke says he's awake, and gets excited, saying to let the guest in. The door is open, and a woman runs in, saying that the son of God's Inquisitor, Lord Aquas, has arrived at the estate. Luke is surprised, and we see a woman. Luke asks what she's doing here, and why the Inquisitor of the Sun God is here. He takes her to his guest room, and they have a seat across from each other. He says it's an honor, introducing himself, and thanks her for visiting despite it being sudden. Aquas sits there silently before introducing herself as an Inquisitor of the Sun God. She's the youngest to ever be appointed. She is the one who beheaded 7 warlocks who had signed pacts with demons, and single-handedly disrupted a massive ritual. Currently, the most powerful Inquisitor of the Sun God on the continent, even the Empire defers to the Sun God's church. She holds power that far exceeds a mere provincial lord, so he wonders why someone like that is here. She says that she's heard the estate has been rather noisy lately. Luke says there was a small problem with the nearby dungeon, but it's been resolved. He says that she must not be here because of the lich, asking the reason for her visit. She says that she is here to speak about a divine oracle. He's surprised, and she says that before she can share its contents, she wants to hear about what happened recently. Luke decides it would be best to tell her. She asks if a barbarian really defeated the lich. Luke says yes, and it may have been Kardos. She says that's pretty crazy to think about, asking if they have proof. He pulls out Kardos's phylactery, and as soon as she sees it, she realizes it's true, asking what in the hell happened, and then clutches her amulet, asking if perhaps the barbarian is still present in this estate right now. Luke says that he is still in the territory. Aquas asks if something like that is even possible though. Luke says it is, and even Lord Cain was defeated by him. She says that it appears a new power has emerged, asking which tribe he is from. Luke tells her that he claims to be from the White Wastelands. She asks how could a being from the demon realm step outside of it, and says that maybe the barbarian is the reason she has been sent here. Luke asks what she means, and she asks if she can meet the barbarian in person. Back inside the inn Kettle is staying at, he is trying to figure out how the hell to use this magic stone. He says it looks like some kind of artifact that supports magic, and that he will ask a mage about it later. He then realizes something, saying come to think of it. It's about that time. Earlier in the morning, the guard captain told him that the Inquisitor of the Sun God has requested a meeting, and the location is the church, and when he meets her to please show proper respect. Kettle tells him not to worry. It jumps to the guard captain looking over, asking Kettle if he is ready to leave. He says that since he is all dressed up, he will take that as a yes, and they will head off then. Kettle says that in this world, gods truly exist. They bestow power directly and may descend in person, and the place where those who serve them gather is the church. But what makes a fantasy church different? The guard captain says they have arrived, and Kettle says that this place looks really cool, and he is obviously in awe. The guard captain says that someone will guide him once he is inside, and Kettle says he appreciates it. He then enters and takes a look around, spotting all of the church-like decorations, and some of the sisters greet him, saying that the Inquisitor is waiting for him, and they will guide him to the room. Kettle says okay, and we hear Aquas saying it is a pleasure to meet him, and she introduces herself to him. He says it is nice to meet her, and of course he introduces himself. He says she is very young, and it means she is very capable. He smiles, and she wonders what he is smiling about and if it means something. He asks what reason she wanted to meet, which catches her off guard for some reason, and she lowers her head, saying that it is about what happened recently. She brings up some of the same lore about Cardos, the one he has claimed defeat, as he has committed grave atrocities across the, eventually becoming a lich, and only heroes could stand against him. Kettle says he has heard about that, but the dude he saw was a lich flailing on his own and ended up destroying himself, and if she doesn't believe him, he can't prove it as he only speaks of what he saw. She asks if he would permit her god to witness their conversation directly. Kettle asks what she means, and she says that if Kettle lies in the sun god's presence, there will be a divine reaction. Kettle says it's like a lie detector, and she says that even if he is not a normal barbarian, he is still a barbarian, and there is no way he would agree to this. She says that if he is uncomfortable, he may refuse, but Kettle asks why he would do that, as this is the perfect chance to experience divine power. She asks if he is certain, and he says hell yeah, and they should start right away. She wonders why he looks so excited, asking if it doesn't make him uncomfortable. He asks what she means, and she says having a god observe him. He asks why that would bother him, as he has nothing to hide, because there has not been a single lie. She realizes she might have treated him too harshly, and says that she understands, and they can begin. She then puts her hands together, praying, asking her God who watches from the highest place and oversees the sun itself to please watch with his gaze and reveal any falsehoods in the space. A giant beam of light begins to descend upon the church, and Kettle immediately feels it, saying that he can feel a presence beyond the light. It's massive, and it is a being that cannot be described in human words, and its emotion right now is nothing but pure confusion. After a little bit, Aquas says that she is glad there is no reaction, and it's time for them to begin. From now on, within this pillar, nothing false is allowed. Kettle opens his eyes, saying he understands. Here are my personal thoughts so far. Just remember, this is all early critique. With how new the series is, there's a ton of room to grow, and this take will most likely change as more chapters drop. That said, it'll be a shorter one for now since, honestly, not a whole lot has happened just yet. First off, I've genuinely been enjoying the series. I'm always a sucker for the super overpowered main character types, and I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the ones who constantly hide their powers. So when Kettle just bulldozes through problems while everyone else stands around terrified. Yeah, I'm here for that. The confusion he causes every time he does something absurd is great. Kettle himself is basically a walking nuclear warhead, and we know almost nothing about his life back on Earth except that he liked to hike. That mystery kind of adds to the appeal. And even though he's this massive barbarian that terrifies everyone around him, his actual energy is just golden retriever. Big dumb grin, good intentions, terrifying presence. As for story progression, I learned the translators just failed to mention that this is the world of a game, but I find it odd he knows nothing about it when he wanted to be here. I could be wrong, but that's what I've been told. But back to the story, not much has happened yet. I do wish the pacing slowed down a bit, especially during the early quests. It would have been fun to see more of that process. But I don't hate that it skipped ahead either. Right now, Kettle is just vibing, living freely, and we're all along for the ride as he unknowingly shakes the whole world. I also love how awkward the humor is. So much nervous laughter and silence, but in a good way. It's hard to tell if we're missing a bigger goal or if this is the goal, just a slice of life series centered around a walking apocalypse with good vibes. Either way, I'm down for it. Now, on to the one thing I don't really like, the combat. And yeah, I get it, Kettle is an unstoppable force. So maybe it's hard to make fights feel impactful when he's that strong. But right now, it's a lot of swing, boom, explosion, repeat. You can feel the raw power, sure, but it lacks flow. It feels empty. I'm more into the fluid, dynamic fights, stuff like Sword King in a fantasy world or Northern Blade. I was honestly expecting something more like Sword King here since the vibes were pretty similar, but this leans lighter in tone, and I hope there's a more serious arc upcoming, or maybe more character development. That said, I'm really curious where this series will go. I don't think even the gods can handle Kettle, so I'm not sure what kind of conflict will ever challenge him. But maybe that's the point, the tension isn't can he win? But more so the absurdity of just his existence. Let me know what you think in the comments. Anything you're loving so far? Anything that bugs you? For now, there's no real character development or symbolism, but give it time. I'm definitely on board, and I hope y'all are too. If you've watched till the end, comment, chicken, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.